Chapter 683. Qin Yunran's move was extremely ingenious. He did not wish to become enemies with the Yimei Daoist sect for no reason. Therefore, his words played down the matter and pushed the Yimei Daoist sect aside. Although the Yimei Daoist sect was unreasonable, they should stop while they were ahead. They would not hold a grudge against the Qin clan. This intention was secondary. Most importantly, Qin Yunran aimed his spear at the Heavenly Emperor Exine clan, the Heavenly Punishing Villa, and the Sound of Thunder sect. Earlier, in fact, Xin Yuanba was annoyed that Exine Tianxin and the others had come out to testify for the Yimei Daoist sect. Even when it came to seizing treasures, the strong would be respected. Whoever got the treasure would have the skill. When you failed to seize the treasure, you used such a method to frame your opponent. You did it before all the elite warriors of the other forbidden spiritual zones. To outsiders, the internal relationship of the Xian Yuan Mound was terrible. Therefore, Xin Yuanba did not agree with it inwardly. Now, upon hearing the words of Qin Yunran, he looked at Exin Tianxin and the others with an indifferent gaze. You three made a solemn vow a moment ago. What do you have to say now? Exin Tianxin said while stuttering, Mr. Ba, my Wuji was indeed harmed by Qin Wushuang. Everything I said came from the information sent by Wuji. There is no exaggeration or falsehood. Perhaps, in a rush, Wuji's investigation information is somewhat wrong. Humph, that Exine Wang, Yin Qinsui, and Lei Hong, who killed them. The white tiger divine beast roared with laughter. I seem to have swallowed them. Those guys came to show off before my cave dwelling. They deserve to die. These words were like a whip that lashed the face of Yin Guinan and Lei Ming. They all looked at Exine Tianxin with confusion. Clearly, they were asking what was going on. They were not idiots, for they knew that most likely Exine Tianxin was deliberately deceiving them. Feeling helpless, Exine Tianxin could only push everything onto the dead Exine Wuji. Wuji, this child, after all, is still somewhat childish. He was the one who transmitted those words to me. Lord Ba, I didn't fabricate anything. Like an idiot, Exin Tianxin explained with his pale words. However, at this moment, everyone looked at him as if they were watching a clown. Xin Yuan Ba snorted and said to Qin Yunran, Yunran, I will report this matter to the family head later. Today is the Kunlun Immortal clan, and it is not suitable to deal with family matters. Qin Yunran also knew the Exine clan's position in the heart of the Totem clan. He also knew that there would not be any follow-up to this matter. However, he had already achieved his goal of protesting. Naturally, he would stop while he was ahead. He nodded. Mr. Ba, my Qin clan is magnanimous. We will not lower ourselves to their level. Xin Yuanba laughed and said, Yunran, it's great that you can show off your style. Xue Chan, this matter should be more or less settled. Sect leader Xue Chan also felt a headache coming on. Naturally, she hoped to end this farce. She nodded and said, Everyone, let's end this matter here. What do you all think? Haha, that's for the best. Let's forget about enmity with a smile. Let's go. Disperse, disperse. Once the Totem elite warriors spoke, the others naturally had no objections. Initially, it had nothing to do with them. Since the show was almost over, everyone was eager to disperse. All of them nodded and supported this end. Female Celestial Miao Yun was still somewhat unreconciled. She walked before the nine-chained Celestial Tiger and asked in a low voice, Great Tiger Saint, this is the supreme Tao fruit. Did you truly swallow it? Tiger Saint revealed his eerie white teeth. Miao Yun, you're even doubting my words? Don't look at how this white tiger acted like a grandson before King Cicada and Li Bai. Before ordinary supreme Tao elite warriors, he still held a supreme position. Even if he had not entered the genuine supreme Tao stage, he would not look down on any person other than the totem powerhouses. Once he broke into the genuine supreme Tao stage, with his bloodline as the descendant of the holy white tiger, he would definitely hold a lofty position. As soon as he said this, although female Celestial Miao Yun was shrewish, she did not dare to speak any more nonsense. She could only sulk inwardly. A moment ago, Qin Wushuang had given her a way out. However, this female celestial Miao Yun's resentment towards Qin Wushuang did not decrease because of this. She glared at Qin Wushuang, and flames of anger gushed out from her eyes. If looks could kill, this female, celestial Miao Yun, would not mind using her eyes to kill Qin Wushuang 100 times. Qin Wushuang did not back down. If there were any woman that made him feel deeply disgusted ever since Qin Wushuang stepped onto the path of martial arts, without a doubt, this female celestial Miao Yun would be elected without any dispute. When the white tiger saw that Miao Yun was still glaring at Qin Wushuang, he sent his voice to shout, "Miao Yun, if you don't want to die, get the hell out of here." Miao Yun's complexion changed drastically. She never expected that Tiger Saint would berate her like this. Although it was only a berating voice, when Tiger Saint flew into a rage, finally Miao Yun experienced traces of subtle uneasiness. Then, thinking about Tiger Saint's absurd testimony from a moment ago, Miao Yun suddenly understood something. She shot a hateful glance at Qin Wushuang and walked out with quick steps. Tiger Saint walked next to Qin Wushuang leisurely and sent his voice to him with a grin. "Little one, I am sorry for earlier." Qin Wushuang's heart thumped. That Tiger Saint already walked out with his long strides. Xian Tianshan glared at Qin Wushuang and still showed a face full of confusion. Why was this kid so lucky every time? And it was unreasonably lucky? Xian Tianshan was not an idiot. Now, he also realized something. The testimony of that divine white tiger could be said to not stand up to scrutiny. It was his accompanying divine fruit. Why did he not swallow it earlier or later? Why did he swallow it at that moment? Also, for a divine beast that was dashing for the genuine supreme Tao stage, how great would the effect be if he swallowed that supreme Tao fruit? It would not be great. Based on the above considerations, Xian Tianshan felt that this matter was incredibly puzzling. Now, both sides had already shed all pretenses of cordiality. Xian Tianshan did not hold back as he walked before Qin Yunran coldly. "Yunran, you are on your own now," Qin Yunran said with a cold sneer. "Xian Tianshan, initially didn't you tell me arrogantly that I would either share the supreme Tao fruit with you, or you would make my Qin clan a rat crossing the street?" A slap to the face, a ruthless slap to the face. Xian Tianshan's face fell hot, and he wished he could find a hole to crawl into. He shot a hateful glance at Qin Wushuang and said with a cold sneer, "I hope you will always have good luck." Shang Yi and Su Mi of the Coiled Dragon clan also walked over. "Brother, I really didn't expect that you would be in the limelight today." "Ha ha ha. Great. It's great to know a brother like you." "Brother, this is my father-in-law, one of the few elite warriors of the Coiled Dragon clan." "Father-in-law, this brother Qin Wushuang is my life and death friend." Long DeBayo had an easygoing personality as he roared with laughter. "Good kid, you are able to remain calm under such a major occasion. No wonder you are my son-in-law's life and death brother, great. I've also heard of junior brother Yunran's name at the Endless Eastern Sea." Before Long DeBayo, Qin Yunran would not dare to neglect him. He was well aware that the strength of this Long DeBayo was definitely above his own. Most likely, he was not much less than the head chief. "Brother Long, this time it's all thanks to your daughter and son-in-law's testimony." Long DeBayo laughed. "This is to be expected. All right, let's all disperse. If there's a chance, come to the Endless Eastern Sea as a guest. Brother, if you have time, come to the Endless Eastern Sea. As your brother, I will treat you with all my heart." Qin Wushuang laughed. "All right, brother, I will certainly go to the Endless Eastern Sea." This was not an empty promise. Currently, Qin Wushuang was extremely concerned about the fifth loop of the Seven Deadly Arrays formation. It was at the Endless Eastern Sea. Therefore, the Endless Eastern Sea was a place that Qin Wushuang must go to. Currently, the situation was getting more and more difficult. Qin Wushuang was also deeply aware of the urgency to increase his strength. Therefore, he planned to explore the fifth loop after returning from the Illusion Heavenly Lake. He would explore the Endless Eastern Sea. It was because Qin Wushuang had a premonition that after the battle with Xian Wuji, the Heavenly Emperor Xian clan would certainly make a move against the Qin clan. By that time, perhaps it would be the start of the Great Expedition. Therefore, the most urgent matter was to increase his strength. Each time he entered the next loop of the 7 deadly arrays formation, there would be supreme, fortuitous opportunities. Each loop would be better than the previous one. Therefore, Qin Wushuang was also full of expectations for the 5th loop of the 7 deadly arrays formation. Not to mention, his current strength had already surpassed the minimum requirement to explore the 5th loop. In terms of timing, he was already extremely mature. When he returned to the guest house, Qin Yunran was also incredibly confused. Wushuang, why did that white tiger divine Bi say that? Since you seized the supreme Tao fruit, there is no reason for him to say that he swallowed it. Qin Wushuang gave a long sigh. Perhaps it's related to Senior Li Bai. Qin Wushuang explained the situation of the white tiger and Li Bai's confrontation. Li Bai. Qin Yunran was also incredibly confused. What is the background of this Senior Li Bai? Even an 8th Transformation Supreme Tao stage warrior could not beat him? Could he be an elite warrior at the genuine Supreme Tao stage? 4 genuine Supreme Tao elite warriors. Besides the totem powerhouses, few sects can produce elite warriors at the genuine Supreme Tao stage. Could this Li Bai be an elite warrior of the totem clan? Qin Wushuang revealed a bitter smile. He had only met this Li Bai 3 times. He only felt that this Li Bai seemed to be everywhere. Up to this point, Qin Wushuang could not understand whether his meeting with Li Bai was a coincidence or fate. Second Chief, now I am more worried about that Xian clan. With Xian Wuji's death, certainly they will make their next move. I just don't know how they will execute their next move. Qin Yunran's expression was solemn as he nodded. We must be careful about this. Once the Xian clan goes crazy, we must be on guard. Only then can we protect the Qin clan to get through this difficult time. Ah! A sharp hissing sound broke through the clouds. A sinister voice gave a low growl as he grabbed his face with trembling hands. He growled with pain and despair. No! Like a wild beast, his entire body trembled like a sieve, and his eyes were filled with murderous intentions. Qin Wushuang, I will not let you die a natural death. I will destroy your Qin clan and kill your 9 generations. I will not let you die a natural death. Kill me? Haha. I already said that the person to kill me has not been born yet. This voice sounded somewhat like Xian Wuji. However, the voice was clearly sharper. However, the person who spoke these words was clearly Xian Wuji. If one were to see the face of the person who spoke these words, they would certainly be incredibly shocked. It was because the figure and appearance of this person was indeed Ruo Ping Fairy of the Amei Daoist sect. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.qitian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 684. He grabbed a giant stone fiercely and smashed it at the reflection on the lake. It was as if he did not want to see the reflection in the water. This person could be said to be the combination of Ruo Ping Fairy and Xian Wuji. Initially, when Xian Wuji was captured by Qin Wushuang, the self-destruction of his body was in fact a smokescreen. The more vigorous the self-destruction, the more it confused Qin Wushuang's eyes and ears. Of course, the price of this self-destruction was the destruction of Xian Wuji's body instantly. It was destroyed along with the Supreme Tao weapons and equipment. However, being the son of the Heavenly Emperor, after all, Xian Wuji had inherited some treasures from the Heavenly Emperor Gate. But this time, when he self-detonated his body, he used a divine focused true soul tome that the Heavenly Emperor had given him to absorb a trace of his origin spirit into the divine focused true soul tome and condensed a divine soul that was equivalent to a fake one. This divine soul did not possess the powerful divine soul power of a true supreme Tao elite warrior. However, it could survive through the Coagulate Spirit Genuine Soul Treasure Book and seize the opportunity to seize a body. After all, it was a fake divine soul nurtured by the Coagulate Spirit Genuine Soul Treasure Book. If he could not find a body to rest in within a certain time, this fake divine soul would slowly disperse. Ruo Ping Fairy deserved this calamity. After Tiger Saint, Li Bai, and Qin Wushuang had left, she had developed feelings and wanted to collect Xian Wuji's body. Just in time, Xian Wuji's fake divine soul had reached a mature stage. While she was unprepared, he scuttled into Ruo Ping Fairy's head palace and killed her primordial spirit directly. After all, the primordial spirit belonged to an immature state. The divine soul was the existence after the primordial spirit had reached perfection. The divine soul could exist independently and was the final form of the primordial spirit. Therefore, although Xian Wuji had a fake divine soul, he still easily destroyed Ruo Ping Fairy's primordial spirit and seized her body to rest in. This way, although the primordial spirit was Ruo Ping Fairy, in terms of body and divine soul, it was Xian Wuji. In a state of panic, of course, Xian Wuji did not have much room to choose. Only this way, the son of the heavenly emperor had become a woman. This was a reason why he was furious at the lake water. For all this time, Xian Wuji had been extremely proud of his 7-feet-tall body. He was extremely satisfied with his luck with women and his lethality. However, with one careless move, he had almost lost his life. Although he was lucky enough to possess a body, he had turned into a woman. Xian Wuji did not feel guilty about killing Ruo Ping Fairy. He was more furious that he had become a woman. Although this Ruo Ping Fairy had a good foundation and could not compare to Xian Wuji's original corporeal body, she was at least an elite warrior at the Ravine Mysterious stage. She was only one step away from him at the peak of the Common Mysterious stage. However, if he had the choice, Xian Wuji would rather seize a man at the perfect Void Martial stage than become a woman. When he walked, the uncomfortable feeling of his chest trembling made Xian Wuji even have the desire to die. Not used to it, not used to it. Qin Wushuang Fai, Xian Wuji, do not make you pay the price. I will be abandoned by both humans and gods. Xian Wuji gritted his teeth and did not dare to delay any longer. He must return to the Heavenly Emperor Mountain immediately. What 10,000-year pilgrimage? With his current appearance, he definitely wouldn't be able to go. He would die in the light if he went. If others learned that he had seized Ruo Ping Fairy's body, most likely the Amei Daoist sect would be the first to kill him. Therefore, Xian Wuji only had one choice. He would hurry back to the Heavenly Emperor Mountain and ask his father to think of a way to find another body for him to rebuild his original body. At this moment, since Xian Wuji's equipment was destroyed, of course he did not have the communication J plate. Therefore, he could not contact his fellow disciples. Even if he wanted to inform them of the recent situation, it would not work. He could only rush back to the Xianyuan mound with all his strength. Achoo! Qin Wushuang felt baffled as he kept sneezing. He could not help but think, could it be someone is cursing me? Then, he could not help but laugh. Most likely, that be *TCH Miao Yin must be cursing him, right? Qin Wushuang felt incredibly relieved. When he saw Miao Yun's deflated expression, he felt relieved. However, after he had vented his anger, he could not but help to worry about Shui Rulin. Having such a vicious teacher, Qin Wushuang was truly worried for Shui Rulin. However, since Shui Rulin was determined not to leave, Qin Wushuang could not put himself in the position of a savior to take her away forcefully. Since Shui Rulin had made her choice, Qin Wushuang could only respect her. Inside the guest house of the Xian clan, those few juniors of the Xian clan were not present. Only 3 people were present. They were Xian Tianshun and the 2 chiefs of the Heavenly Punishing Villa and the Sound of Thunder sect. When these 3 supreme Dao elite warriors gathered together, each of them revealed an incredibly grave expression. Lei Ming was the first one to lose his cool as he said with hatred, "Darn it, why is that Qin Wushuang so lucky each time? That divine beast of the Amei Daoist sect also exonerated him? Could it be that this Qin Wushuang has such a wide network?" Xian Tianshan denied flatly, "Impossible." Female celestial Miao Yin is extremely disgusted with Qin Wushuang. Certainly that divine beast is not exonerating Qin Wushuang. Perhaps Wuji and the others have offended that divine beast. Therefore, that divine beast does not wish to speak for us. Yin Guinan said with a bitter smile, "This does not make sense. It's easy to understand that the divine beast does not speak for us. However, for him to speak this way, isn't he also not giving face to female celestial Miao Yin?" Brother Guinan, then you say, could it be that the head chief of the illusion Heavenly Lake instructed the white tiger to speak this way? Didn't that chief snow cicada say that their head chief summoned the white tiger? Yin Guinan gave a long sigh. Perhaps this is the only explanation. Perhaps the head chief felt that if everyone came to participate in the 10,000-year immortal pilgrimage pageant, it would not benefit the Karakoram immortal clan if the matter were to escalate. Therefore, the head chief carried the attitude of keeping the peace and let the white tiger speak this way. After thinking about it, this was the only possibility. They would never believe that the Qin clan's network extended to the totem powerhouse of the illusion Heavenly Lake. If the Qin clan truly had such network, they would not have holed up at the aspiring throne mountain like a turtle. All right, although this matter is complicated and confusing, it will end here. Xian Tianshan suppressed his anger and said with a low voice, "Now, the crucial problem is how to suppress the arrogance of the Qin clan. If we allow Qin Wushuang to grow at such speed, just imagine, with the grudge between the heavenly punishment and the sound of thunder sect with the Qin clan, in the future, would the Qin clan allow you to establish yourselves in the Heavenly Emperor 8 gates?" These words had hit the vital point. The expression of Yin Guinan and Lei Ming changed drastically. Especially Lei Ming. He pulled his fist hard and said painfully, "Even Wuji was killed by him. Up to this point, I still find it hard to believe. Didn't that kid come from the human countries?" Xian Tianshan also felt incredibly sorrowful. That's the truth. Therefore, we cannot judge this Qin Wushuang by normal standards. We must not hesitate to make a move against the Qin clan. Brother Tianshan, can the Heavenly Emperor make up his mind? Yin Guinan asked. His Majesty lost his beloved son. How could he not make up his mind? Xian Tianshan said. Now, let's see if you two can work together. As soon as we return to the Heavenly Emperor Mountain, we will attack the Qin clan together. All right, Lei Ming cried out. If the three of us work together, it would be strange if the Qin clan is not destroyed. Yin Guinan said, it's better to have an explanation from the Xian Yuan clan. I see that a moment ago, Mr. Ba disapproved of our actions. Yin Guinan was smart. By observing his words and body language, he knew that Xian Yuan Ba would not be happy. After all, their actions had shamed the face of the Xian Yuan Mount. However, Xian Tianshan said, don't worry about the Xian Yuan clan. Clearly, Mr. Ba is unwilling to get involved in our dispute. For the matter at the Heavenly Emperor Mountain, we will solve it internally. Now, the crucial problem is that we must speak with the same tone. We must insist that it was Qin Wushuang who killed our disciples. Only this way, when we deal with the Qin clan with all our strength, it will show that we have a good reason. We will not become the subject of ridicule. In fact, this is rather simple. The Heavenly Emperor made a 3-point agreement. Since the Qin clan went against it, we will have an excuse to make a move. Xian Tianshan nodded. All right, you should inform the leaders of your sections. Once we return to the Heavenly Emperor Mountain, we will make a move immediately. Xian Tianshan said viciously. We must catch the Qin clan off guard. All right, kill the Qin clan. They have occupied the Heavenly Emperor Mountain for too long. They're smelly and stubborn. I believe that when we get rid of the Qin clan, many people will clap their hands and cheer, Lei Ming said narcissistically. However, Yin Guinan muttered to himself irresolutely, say, did that Qin Wushuang get the supreme Dao fruit or not? When we make a move against the Qin clan, should we let Qin Wushuang and his people return to the sect, or should we kill them on the way? The Heavenly Emperor made a 3-point agreement, but he did not say that we cannot make a move on the way back. I think it's best to kill them on the way. Lei Ming said, it's always troublesome to let them gather together. However, Xian Tianshan shook his head. No, if we're to make a move, we must wait for them to return. If we make a move on the way, we will beat the grass and scare the snake. The headquarters of the Qin clan will make adjustments in time. We must numb them and make them unable to feel our hostility. We will launch a surprise attack and catch them all in one fell swoop. The three of them were counting their chickens before they were hatched. They did not disguise their hatred towards the Qin clan. It could be said that their hatred had penetrated deep into their bones. Deep inside the illusion heavenly lake, a scholarly and weak figure stood at the top of the lake. Now, it was already late at night. This person did not have a tall figure, and even appeared somewhat scholarly and weak. He fixed his gaze at the resplendent starry sky and gave a light sigh. He whispered to himself, "Time has passed so quickly. It's almost time for the god discarding door to open. Will the fate of the Tianxian land be turned around? Or will they always be choked by someone and have to depend on someone else's nose?" Indeed, this person was Li Bai. This scholarly person who was usually laughing and frivolous had a face full of experience. His eyes were also full of sorrow for the fate of mankind. Starry sky. Such a beautiful starry sky. Li Bai whispered. Suddenly, his expression sank as he said lightly, "You too, there is no one here, come out." Like meteors falling from the sky, two figures dropped to the shore of the heavenly lake. "Brother Bai, I trust you have been well since we last met." These two had similar figures. They were both tall and proud, and gave people a form of transcendence. One was wearing an orange and yellow robe, and the other was wearing a purple robe. They appeared to be about 30 years old. Their movements were confident and at ease. However, when they saw Li Bai, the three of them looked at each other, and between their brows, there was a hidden worry. "Brother Yifeng, brother Yishuan, after not seeing you for tens and thousands of years, congratulations." Li Bai's tone was full of vicissitudes. A long sigh seemed to have experienced the vicissitudes of time. The person in yellow robe was called Li Yifeng. The person in purple robe was called Xiao Yishuan. These two were elite warriors on the same level as Li Bai. The identities of these three were incredibly mysterious. Of course, at the Tianxian land, these two kept an even lower profile than Li Bai. Even the Totem clan almost never heard of these two. However, in terms of strength, most likely those Totem elite warriors would lower their heads before these two. "Brother Bai, in these tens and thousands of years, you have visited the entire Tianxian land. Did you gain anything?" Li Yifeng asked with a smile. "Yes, I think with your insight, you should have already gained something, right?" Xiao Yishuan's eyes were also filled with expectation. Li Bai gave a long sigh. "I can only tell you that the formation has been activated. The master has appeared. Only, the master of the formation is still in the process of growing. He didn't appear as late as I thought. However, he is growing faster than I thought. Everyone, tens and thousands of years have passed in the blink of an eye. It should be fine to wait for him for a few dozen years, right?" The 7 deadly arrays formation has been activated. Between the brows of Li Yifeng and Xiao Yishuan, a burst of joy emerged. P.S. I saw many book reviews and friends speculating about Li Bai's identity and background. Haha, a small portion of them have targeted him, yet the scope of their thinking is still too small. Everyone can look at the tone of the entire book. It should carry a form of grand and somewhat tragic mood. Throughout the story, Qin Wushuang was almost struggling for survival. Okay, let's not talk about the extra words to avoid spoilers. Haha, today is the birthday of a hardcore book friend, the Rogue Beauty Rain. I hope she will become more rogue and strive to surpass Old Bull. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 685. Li Bai nodded with certainty, yet he did not show much joy. He turned around to ask, "You too, how is the situation on your side?" Li Yifeng said, "For now, the situation is stable. However, the power of the Stardust Barrier is still weakening. The future is worrying." Xiao Yishuan gave a long sigh. "Perhaps it will be after a few tens of thousands of years, or a few hundred years. No one knows. Brother Bai, could it be that the Tian Xianlan can only sit and wait for the judgment of fate? There is also some bitterness in Li Bai's expression. However, this bitterness disappeared in a flash and was replaced by an indomitable determination. You too, there is no unchanging fate in the natural law. Regardless of the fate, we can only fight with all our might. Even if we were to be smashed into pieces, would you regret it? Li Yifeng and Xiao Yishuan exchanged a glance. Their eyes were abnormally determined. We will never regret it. Li Bai laughed and spoke with a somewhat aged tone. He gave a light sigh. The people of the world cannot see what we have done. We are destined to be lonely and not to be understood. Brother Bai, we have endured a few tens of thousands of years of loneliness. Since we have chosen this path, even if it's a dead end, we will keep walking. There was a trace of a bitter smile on the corner of Xiao Yishuan's mouth. However, a form of great brilliance shone from between his brows. Li Yifeng laughed optimistically. I say, don't be too pessimistic. Perhaps, after walking out of this darkness, there will be a great path to the heavens ahead of us. Brother Bai, please take care of this side. The two of us will always keep an eye on the Stardust Barrier. Li Bai also withdrew his usual mischievous attitude and stood up emotionally. All right, you two, I will not keep you. Under the vast starry sky, the beautiful illusion Heavenly Lake emitted a temperament that could make people obsessed. Between the clouds and mist, two bursts of lights flashed and disappeared into the boundless sky. Li Bai gave a long sigh. His frail figure appeared tall and straight, unyielding and stubborn. Because of this disturbance at the Amei Daoist sect to the Qin clan, the 10,000-year immortal pilgrimage festival had lost its original meaning. From Qin Yunran to Qin Wushuang, they were all considering their fate at the Qin clan. A premonition storm could already be predicted. However, Qin Yunran's optimistic nature had infected disciples like Qin Wushuang and Qin Taichung. The 10,000-year pilgrimage festival was divided into 3 segments. The first segment was to visit the various sacred grounds of the Kunlun Immortal Clan, including the Illusion Heavenly Lake, the Jade Void Palace, and many other sacred grounds. With regards to the Totem Clan, the various forces were still filled with curiosity. Naturally, he wouldn't let go of this opportunity to broaden his horizons. The 3 to 4 days of sightseeing had indeed broadened his horizons. The second segment was to taste the special immortal fruits of the Kunlun Immortal Clan. Although this immortal fruit couldn't be compared to the supreme Tao fruit, it was still good for prolonging one's lifespan and strengthening one's physique. It wasn't that the Kunlun Immortal Clan didn't have anything better than the supreme Tao fruit, but even the totem forces valued such a good thing very much. Naturally, it was impossible to share it widely. The third segment of the 10,000-year pilgrimage pageant, which was also the finale, was a martial arts demonstration segment. Naturally, it was impossible for those old fellows to take part in this martial arts demonstration. Those who participated in the martial arts practice were all young people from various sects and clans. Of course, this martial arts demonstration wasn't just organized by the Kunlun Immortal Clan alone. Instead, it was organized by the Kunlun Immortal Clan together with the 5 totem forces. Since it was organized by the totem forces of the 5 forbidden spiritual zones, the disciples of the totem forces naturally wouldn't participate. In other words, this martial arts demonstration was targeted at the other invited forces of the 5 forbidden spiritual zones. And all the rewards were also shared among the 5 totem forces. Every totem force would give out the same things. They were a supreme Tao fruit, a supreme Tao protective armor, and a supreme Tao weapon. There were a total of 5 totem forces. In other words, there were a total of 5 supreme Tao fruits, 5 supreme Tao protective armor, and 5 supreme Tao weapons. The rewards of this martial arts demonstration were very substantial. In order to encourage everyone to participate, the rewards were also very generous. First place, 2 supreme Tao fruits, a protective armor, and a supreme Tao weapon. Second place, 1 supreme Tao fruit and a protective armor. Third place, 1 supreme Tao fruit and a supreme Tao weapon. Fourth place, 1 supreme Tao fruit. From the 5th to the 7th place, they were all rewarded with a Supreme Tao protective armor. From the 8th to the 10th place, they were rewarded with a Supreme Tao weapon. The Supreme Tao fruit could create an elite warrior of the Supreme Tao. Such things were the most precious at any time. As a Supreme Tao protective tool, the Supreme Tao protective armor was more practical and rare than the Supreme Tao weapon. Therefore, it was reasonable for it to be the reward for the 2nd place. The Supreme Tao weapon was relatively inferior. Naturally, it was ranked 3rd. Such rewards could be said to cover a wide range. This also stimulated the interest of each sex to some extent. Although these sects were first-rate powerhouses of their respective forbidden spiritual zones. However, even among first-rate powerhouses, there are differences in strength. For example, for the Heavenly Punishing Villa and the Sound of Thunder sect, their strength was at most in the middle level among the Heavenly Emperor 8 Gates. Clearly, they were not inferior to the Xian, Qin, and Yun clan. Therefore, to them, even a Supreme Tao weapon was extremely precious. After all, for such sects, at most, they would only have a single-digit number of Supreme Tao weapons. Naturally, they were willing to fight for it. In fact, the majority of the powerhouses that came here as guests possessed similar strength to the Heavenly Punishing Villa and the Sound of Thunder sect. Therefore, from the surface, perhaps it would be difficult to compete for the top 3. However, they could still fight for the top 10 spots. In any case, the probability of death was extremely low in such martial arts practice. Basically, it would be impossible to die. Therefore, everyone was willing to try. Of course, for the sects that were invited to the Karakoram Immortal Clan, there were a total of 37 powerhouses from the 5 forbidden spiritual zones. Among them, the Xianyuan Mound had the Heavenly Emperor 8 Gates. There were 6 major Taoist sects at the Illusion Heavenly Lake. The Heavenly Fire Southern Border and the Extreme North Snow Zone each had 7 powerhouses. The Endless Eastern Sea had the most, as all the true 9 dragon clans had arrived. Not a single one of the non-9 dragon clans had come. Therefore, the powerhouses of the Endless Eastern Sea were equal to 9 powerhouses. In total, there were 37 powerhouses. For each of the 30 powerhouses, naturally not everyone was qualified to participate. Each powerhouse would receive the same number of spots. Each powerhouse would only receive 2 spots. This way, the total number of spots added up to 74 people. Basically, it would be impossible for any powerhouse to give up this precious spot. Therefore, although the probability of 74 people competing for the top 10 spots was not high, it would not be low. Additionally, the content of this martial arts practice was not to fight on the stage. It was more of a test. Of course, the content of the test was also targeted. It was to test the comprehensive quality of the young people from the 5 forbidden spiritual zones. It included their strength, performance on the spot, spiritual perception, mental quality, of course. There was also that mysterious fortune. Most of the time, in a world of martial arts, one must admit the existence of fortune. Many people did not lack talent, yet they were not born with fortune. They died early or did not encounter any great fortuitous opportunities. In the end, they became ordinary and mediocre people. There were many such people. On the day of the martial arts practice, everyone gathered inside the Jade Void Palace. Still, Chief Snow Cicada presided over the general situation as the host. The other totem elite warriors assisted her. Everyone, all the rewards have been collected. The content of this martial arts practice is not complicated. It's to break through the Illusion Heavenly Lake. The Illusion Heavenly Lake is at the peak of the Karakoram Immortal Mountain. There's a small world inside, and it's the supreme holy place of the Karakoram Immortal Clan. We will open 12 islands with different levels of difficulty. The participants will start from the first island and challenge it one at a time. The higher the level you break through, the higher your ranking will be. The islands of the same level will be ranked according to the time you stay. For example, if 5 of you have reached the 7th level, then among these 5 people, the one who stayed the longest will be the 5 people with the best results and the highest ranking on the 7th level, and so on. Snow Cicada announced the rules concisely. The rules were not difficult to understand. After Chief Snow Cicada finished speaking, everyone nodded in understanding. Chief Snow Cicada continued. The 12 islands that are open are divided into 4 levels. Every 3 islands are divided into 1 level. In the 3 islands of the first level, the time limit is 10 days. In the 3 islands of the second level, the time limit is 20 days. In the 3 islands of the third level, the time limit is 30 days. In the 3 islands of the last level, the time limit is 60 days. In other words, if you can persist and not leave the island within the time limit, you will pass. These are all the rules. Do you all understand? Understood. Qin Wushuang also felt that the rules were not difficult to understand. To put it bluntly, it was to survive on the islands. In each level of the island, if the time limit was reached, they would pass. However, in total, to pass through all the islands, it would take an entire year. Of course, since there were only 12 islands within the rules, it would be extremely difficult to pass through all of them. Chief Snow Cicada said with a smile, "The rules are simple. Each sect will have 2 spots. You can discuss and report the spots. When the list comes out, we will begin immediately. If you feel it is inconvenient to discuss here, you can return to the guest house and discuss slowly. After all, today is the day of registration. There is no rush. For such major matters, of course they must discuss it privately." Upon hearing the words of Chief Snow Cicada, all the sects left the Jade Void Palace and returned to the guest house to discuss. For the Qin clan, although they were concerned about the clan situation, since they had come to this pageant, there was no reason for them not to participate. Qin Yunran looked at the 5 eager youths. He smiled and said, "What are your thoughts? Tell me about them. For the 2 spots, there are 5 of you. Who do you think is more suitable?" Qin Yunran threw the problem to the young people and let them solve it themselves. This way, the atmosphere was more or less strange. Today I was delayed by some matters. However, the 6th watch will be completed regardless of how late it is. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.chidian.com. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 686. Qin Taichong was the head senior brother and possessed superior strength. He also held a superior position. No one would think about his spot. The remaining spot would be chosen from Qin Wushuang, Qin Jining, Qin Hao, and Qin Hongyan. If it were in the past, perhaps Qin Jining would have some desire to compete. However, Qin Wushuang's recent battle results were too monstrous. Even Xi and Wuji had been killed by him. Despite Qin Jining's confidence, he knew that this spot will belong to none other than Qin Wushuang. If the 3 of them were to compete, they would not understand the general situation. Since Qin Jining thought this way, he did not have any obsession. He said calmly, "Second Chief, senior brother Taichong possesses superior strength and far surpasses us. Of course he should take 1 spot." For this statement, Qin Hao and Qin Hongyan would not object. All of them nodded to show their agreement. Qin Jining revealed an indifferent smile. Although junior brother Wushuang is an up-and-coming talent, even Xi and Wuji, the son of the Heavenly Emperor, died at his hands. I cannot think of anyone among the young generation that could fight against junior brother Wushuang besides the disciples of the Totem Clan. Therefore, the last spot belonged to junior brother Wushuang. Regardless of the public or private interest, I would not dare to have the thought of competing for it. Junior brother Wushuang, please take this spot. Qin Jining had a rather cold personality and did not like to speak much. In fact, he did not speak much with Qin Wushuang. However, at this moment, he was the first one to step out to support Qin Wushuang. It made Qin Wushuang feel somewhat surprised. Qin Yunran laughed and shot a glance at Qin Hao and Qin Hongyan. What do you 2 think? These 2 were slightly inferior to Qin Jining. Upon hearing Qin Jining speak this way, of course they would not hold any extravagant hope. Feeling helpless, they could only say, "Junior brother Wushuang has such dazzling battle results. Even if we want to compete, I am afraid we are not as strong." Of course, junior brother Wushuang will go. Qin Taichong chuckled. "All right, I think this is good." Junior brother Wu Shuang. Even Xi and Wuji could not defeat you. As your senior brother, I am truly ashamed. Qin Wu Shuang laughed. Senior brother Taichung, when I fought with X and Wuji, I was lucky. In terms of personal strength, there is still a gap between me and Xi and Wuji. Qin Taichung laughed straightforwardly. Junior brother Wu Shuang, don't comfort me, but I have a great breadth of mind. When I see you surpassing me, certainly I will clap for you and be happy for you. The Qin clan should have a few more geniuses. Junior brother Wu Shuang, do you have the confidence? The rewards are great, Taichung. Battle Taichung Wu Shuang to be had. Battle Taichung a supreme Dao to win. One a supreme Dao weapon. One to say the champion. Taichung Qin and Taichung. Taichung's Taichung Tong and Qin Tong to Taichung. To the end, to two for that, to for it, to win. To win. Qin Wu Shuang you two, to speak, you to speak, you to speak, to be for you. To have to the to express, to speak to the to speak. Everyone's gaze stopped on the face of Qin Wu Shuang and Qin Taichung. Taichung, you are the senior brother. State your opinion. Qin Yinran said. Qin Taichung gave a long sigh. In the 5 forbidden spiritual zones, there are many disciples with exceptional talent. My minimum goal is to enter the top 10. I will work hard to aim for the top 4. Qin Taichung had deliberately highlighted the top 4 because the top 4 would all have supreme Dao fruits. To speak the truth, for a major sect with an ancient inheritance like the Qin clan, certainly they would have more abundant supreme Dao armor and supreme Dao weapons than a sect without foundation like the Heavenly Punishing Villa. Therefore, for the supreme Dao armor and supreme Dao weapons, naturally Qin Taichung, the senior brother of the Qin clan, was not in a rush. Therefore, his final goal was to aim for the 4th place and to acquire a supreme Dao fruit. Of course, although Qin Taichung had exceptional talent, there were many elite warriors among the 37 powerhouses. There were many with exceptional talent. For those at the level of Qin Taichung, there were at least 10 to 15. Additionally, there were some that were even more powerful than Qin Taichung. For example, someone at the level of Xi and Wuji. Although Xi and Wuji had already died as the number 1 beneath the Xian Yuan Mound Totem clan, in other forbidden spiritual zones, there were also existences similar to Xi and Wuji. Therefore, although Qin Taichung had a goal to aim for the top 4, it would be extremely difficult to achieve it. Qin Yinran was not overly harsh as he laughed. Taichung, use your full strength. You have a bold and unrestrained personality, regardless of gains and losses. Perhaps there will be unexpected gains. However, even if you cannot aim for the top 4, you will not lose. It's a great victory to be able to enter the top 10. Naturally, it would be an exceptional result for 74 people to enter the top 10. What did this mean? It meant that besides the totem clans, he would be in the top 10 of the young generation across the entire Tianxian land. Naturally, it would be a supreme honor. Qin Taichung chuckled. Junior brother Wu Shuang, what about you? Tell us about it. When Qin Wu Shuang saw everyone looking at him with burning eyes, he knew that it would not do if he did not express his opinion. Instantly, he said, my goal is similar to senior brother. In general, I will give it my all. I will do my best. The result will be secondary. After experiencing so many big and small battles, Qin Wu Shuang already had a great mentality. Of course, he would not care too much about gains and losses under such circumstances. Although this stage was huge, such martial arts performance with the nature of a trial did not pose any threat to one's life. It would be strange if it could cause great waves in Qin Wu Shuang. Qin Yinran knew that Qin Wu Shuang had a different personality than Qin Taichung. Qin Taichung had a straightforward personality, while Qin Wu Shuang was somewhat reserved. From his eyes, one could see that Qin Wu Shuang had some ambition. However, he did not expose this ambition completely. Instead, he used a restrained and reserved method to express it. Qin Yinran did not force him as he encouraged him with a smile. All right, regardless, for the Qin clan, even if we are not fighting for that reward, we should fight for our reputation. For this battle, I will not ask you to get much reward, but I want to give you a hope. Oh, Qin Taichung raised his brow. Second chief, please speak. Qin Yunran withdrew his usual cheerful attitude and said seriously, the Heavenly Emperor 8 Gates have always been in constant competition. I only hope that in this battle, you can prove to the outside world that the Qin clan is still the most outstanding among the Heavenly Emperor 8 Gates. If possible, you must press the Xian and Yun clan under your feet. He only mentioned the Qin and Yun clan and did not mention the other powerhouses. Clearly, in Qin Yunran's eyes, the other powerhouses were not worthy to be mentioned on equal terms with the Qin clan. When Qin Yunran saw everyone's different expression, he laughed. Don't look at me with those suspicious eyes. That's right, this is my expectation for you guys. The Yun clan shares a good relationship with the Qin clan. At least, they're not hostile powerhouses. However, for such competition, we must not pass on our responsibility. If we can press down on the Yun clan, it will also prove that the Qin clan is not getting worse with each generation, as the outside world says. Understand? Qin Taichung and Qin Wushuang exchanged a glance. At the same time, they revealed a look of tacit understanding. A sense of duty and honor had caused their expression to show some extra seriousness and dignity. Indeed, it was time for the Qin clan to prove their strength and foundation. Qin Wushuang's mood surged slightly. The illusion Heavenly Lake was a dreamlike place. It was also Qin Wushuang's first time getting in touch with a mysterious totem secret territory. More or less, Qin Wushuang was looking forward to it. Qin Yunran said again, Wushuang, now everyone knows that you killed Xian Wuji. Your voice must be loud. So don't be too stressed. Qin Wushuang laughed. Don't worry, I didn't even think about these things. All right, then let's go sign up. For this battle, we must bring out the imposing manner of the Qin clan. We must let the outside world know that the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan will not be defeated. Stirred lights flashed in Qin Yunran's eyes. Clearly, this martial arts performance exam also caused him to develop a form of powerful expectation. Soon, the registration was completed. Soon, the list of 74 people from 37 sects was listed. Basically, there was not much suspense for these lists. The most depressed one was the Heavenly Emperor Xian clan. Their strongest Xian Wuji had died. Therefore, compared to the Qin clan, the disciples they sent out had no advantage. One of them, Xian Wuyo, was on par with Qin Taichung, or even slightly inferior. The other one, Xian Wufeng, was on par with Qin Jining, although such a combination was rather dazzling. However, compared to the Qin clan, they were inferior. For the other powerhouses of the Heavenly Emperor 8 Gates, besides the Yun clan, the other 5 sects were weaker than the other 5. The other 5 sects were relatively weaker in terms of strength. Therefore, the teams they sent were not that conspicuous. Especially for the Heavenly Punishing Villa and the Sound of Thunder sect, although their most exceptional disciples had not fallen, the loss of Yin Qiansui and Lei Hong had caused them great losses. The 2 disciples of the Yun clan were called Yun Zhongye and Yun Zhonghe. They also possessed exceptional strength. In comparison, they had overshadowed the limelight of the Xian clan. Without a doubt, among the Heavenly Emperor 8 Gates, due to the absence of Xian Wuji, it caused the Xian clan to not be as dazzling as the Qin and Yun clan. Therefore, among the Heavenly Emperor 8 Gates, the ones with the most support were not the Heavenly Emperor Gate, but the 2 old powerhouses, the Yun and Qin clan. Especially for the Qin clan, this sect that people had always thought was going downhill, this time, a devilish figure had emerged and killed Xian Wuji, the son of the Heavenly Emperor. Beneath the totem powerhouse, any powerhouse must pay enough attention to Qin Wushuang and view him as an imaginary enemy. Under the lead of the totem elite warriors, the 74 participants arrived at the transportation channel. Chief Shuechan congealed her voice and said, "Young man, when this transportation platform is activated, you will be sent to the first island. This island is also the entry stage and has the lowest level of difficulty. I believe it will not be a big problem for you. However, the difficulty of each island would increase correspondingly. Therefore, you must not let down your guard and be fooled by the low level of difficulty of the previous island. Now, everyone come up and take a transportation jade plate. Once you encounter a life and death crisis and feel that you cannot hold on, immediately activate the transportation jade plate. The transportation divine light will take you away. Of course, once it's activated, it means the end of your challenge. For the rules, everyone was well aware of them. Without wasting time, they went up one by one to take the transportation jade plate. When Qin Wushuang went up, he clearly felt many gazes focused on him, especially 4 or 5 gazes that were abnormally sharp and powerful. Qin Wushuang knew that these gazes had the hope to aim for the championship. They viewed Qin Wushuang as a potential opponent. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.qijian.com. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 687. The Supreme Tao Fruit was incredibly alluring. Although Qin Wushuang had acquired 2 from the 9-change celestial tiger for this thing, the more the better. Of course, Qin Wushuang would not mind having more. If one were to speak of the most precious things in the Tianxian land, the Supreme Tao Fruit would definitely be one of them. It was also the most precious thing that Qin Wushuang had come into contact with up to this point. If it weren't for the pageant of the Totem Clan, this Supreme Tao Fruit might not even appear once in 100 years. Therefore, even the most exceptional young people this time were looking forward to the Supreme Tao Fruit greatly. Additionally, everyone was the most exceptional genius from their respective forbidden zones, who would be convinced by the others. Without the participation of the disciples of the Totem Clan, of course they would not be convinced by others. All of them coveted the championship. Therefore, it was not strange for Qin Wushuang to feel such latent hostility. Everyone wants the championship, but there is only one spot. Qin Wushuang's mind was as clear as a mirror. If it were an arena competition, perhaps it would be extremely difficult for me if I were forbidden from using the sealed spiritual beast. However, for such a competition with the nature of a trial, it's equivalent to surviving in a difficult situation. With the sealed spiritual beast, I still have great assurance. Since the Qin clan needs fame and prestige, I will aim for the championship. This was Qin Wushuang's lofty aspiration. Although he had never spoken out, he was abnormally determined. All right, young man, before we depart, please listen to my kind words of advice. Breaking through this island is a real trial with real swords and spears. If you don't want to lose your life, you must activate the transportation jade plate in times of crisis. Or else, once you encounter a crisis and die, the organization will not be responsible. Chief Snow Cicada said with a smile, "For the first 6 islands, you candidates must not engage in internal strife and attack each other. Whoever attacks the opponent will be disqualified immediately. At the 3rd level, which is starting from the 7th island, to distinguish the top, candidates can make moves against each other. Of course, if you're not disciples of the same sect, you must never form an alliance. Once you find out that you're not disciples of the same sect, you will be disqualified. All your previous results will be reset to 0. This rule encouraged cooperation between disciples of the same sect and discouraged collusion between different sections. This eliminated the possibility of cheating between small groups. All right, let's all step onto the teleportation platform," sect leader Shui Chan said indifferently. All the participating disciples walked over one after another. The teleportation platform was extremely wide. It was several miles wide, and the 74 contestants standing in it were not conspicuous at all. The teleportation platform was activated, and the entire platform was enveloped by a white light. The platform slowly descended and sank into the ground. Suddenly, the white light expanded, and the array formation was fully activated. Everyone was immediately teleported out by the divine Tao light. Boom! 74 figures turned into 74 streaks of light and landed on the first island like meteors. The first island was basically entry-level. However, this entry-level island did not mean that it was peaceful. Regardless of whether it was the interior of the island or the waters of the illusion heavenly lake, there were all kinds of spirit beasts that constantly attacked and harassed them. Although these people's strength was enough to deal with these spirit beasts, if anyone was careless, it was not impossible for them to lose their footing. This island could hold 74 people, and it was like a stone sinking into the sea. The entire island was at least 1,000 miles. In the illusion heavenly lake, it was like a tiny chess piece. Placed on the chessboard created by heaven and earth, the illusion heavenly lake, it was very tiny. The 3 islands in the first level, which was the first to third islands, had a time limit of 10 days. After Qin Wushuang entered the island, he did not divert his attention to do other things at all. Instead, he wholeheartedly found a quiet place to cultivate properly. During this period of time, he was on the move and did not have much time to cultivate. It was rare for this illusion heavenly lake to have such a wonderful environment. Although it was somewhat dangerous, with Qin Wushuang's current strength, he did not have the slightest bit of worry about the 3 islands in the first level. Moreover, there was still the sealed spirit beast to protect him. However, this time, Qin Wushuang did not make a big fuss. He only summoned the Sky Pilfered Mole and Moon Palace Jade Hair. With these 2 spirit beasts to stand guard for him, it was basically enough. Anyway, the contestants were not allowed to attack each other in the first 6 islands. He was also not worried that someone would violate the rules. The responsibility of the Sky Pilfered Mole and Moon Palace Jade Hair was to guard against monsters who did not have eyes barging in. Almost in the blink of an eye, 10 days had passed. To tell the truth, Qin Wushuang deeply hoped that this time could be longer. However, the rules were as such. 10 days had passed. Out of the 74 contestants, 2 of them had been disqualified. However, it was not because they were not strong enough, but because they had bad luck. One of them had encountered a group of beasts, and the other one had been bitten by a poisonous creature. These 2 unlucky guys had also become the laughingstock of the outside world. After 10 days, all the contestants arrived near the transportation platform of the first island and were directly transported to the second island. Clearly, the difficulty level of this island was different than the first one. It was clear that the frequency of monsters appearing was much higher. Moreover, the strength and number of monsters were much more than on the first island. Of course, to Qin Wushuang, this did not pose any pressure. In total, it would take 30 days for the first 3 islands in the first level. Qin Wushuang planned to use these 30 days to temper his own strength. Currently, he was at the perfect void martial stage. It would be a great challenge to dash for that exquisite mysterious boundary stage. The void martial stage was to merge with the void, refine one's form, and acquire supreme divine skills. The exquisite mysterious boundary stage was the bridge to the supreme Tao stage. It was a great stage where one could shatter the void, merge one's body and soul with the Tao. In other words, to enter the exquisite mysterious boundary stage, one must comprehend the profound principle of shattering the void. Qin Wushuang did not lack talent, strength, or comprehension. He only lacked the maturity required for this process. After all, training was not like other things. In addition to the moment of inspiration, it also required a quantitative accumulation. The process of this accumulation differed according to the difference in talent. The amount of time spent would also be different. And Qin Wushuang was one of the best in this field. Since he had stepped onto the path of martial arts, in 10 years, he had already trained to the perfect void martial stage. Looking back at this result, it had far surpassed the limits of the human country's imagination. However, compared to the entire Tianxian land, although Qin Wushuang's talent was outstanding, there were also people with the same talent as him. After all, the forbidden spiritual zones were places where talents emerged in large numbers. In terms of that Xian Wuji, he was at the peak of the common mysterious stage. In terms of strength, Qin Wushuang was indeed slightly inferior to Xian Wuji. For this martial arts performance, there were at least 4 people on the same level as Xian Wuji. In other words, besides the Xin Yuan Mound, at least one of the other 4 forbidden spiritual zones was on the same level as Xian Wuji. These 4 or 5 people were the first tier of competitors. Next, there were about 10 people at the level of Qin Taichung. Therefore, it would be difficult for Qin Taichung to compete for the top 10. Not to mention the top 4, the difficulty would be immeasurable. Qin Wushuang concentrated on tempering his own primordial spirit. Qin Wushuang knew that after entering the Supreme Tao stage, each Supreme Tao elite warrior would specialize in the Supreme Tao attribute. For example, Second Chief Qin Yunran specialized in the fire attribute. Therefore, his control over the fire attribute far surpassed the other attributes. Senior Yun Xuechen specialized in the water attribute. Therefore, Senior Yun Xuechen's Supreme Tao characteristics appeared extremely gentle and confident. It gave people a feeling of extreme gentleness. As Qin Wushuang pondered over these difficult Supreme Tao problems, he thought, since the exquisite mysterious boundary stage is the bridge to the Supreme Tao stage, then after entering this exquisite mysterious boundary stage, certainly it will involve the comprehension of attributes. The Supreme Tao stage starts from the exquisite mysterious boundary stage. Indeed, the comprehension of attribute laws is much more important than the void martial stage and the spiritual martial stage. Qin Wushuang thought carefully. Before the void martial stage, he had only pursued the killing power of martial arts. In fact, he did not pursue the training of attributes too much. After all, the power of physical attacks would sometimes make attribute attacks appear superfluous. However, in the Supreme Tao stage, the comprehension of attributes was extremely important. It would also become the main direction of comprehension for Supreme Tao elite warriors. If one were to say that the Supreme Tao stage was more powerful than those beneath the Supreme Tao stage, in fact, this powerful aspect would be the usage of attributes. Regarding the natural power of heaven and earth, the spiritual martial stage was the beginning. The void martial stage was the next level. Then, the Supreme Tao stage could be said to be entering the best stage. The difference between the strength of the Supreme Tao stage was the strength of the comprehension of attributes, the usage and control of the natural elements. In the Supreme Tao stage, physical attacks would be secondary. As Qin Wushuang organized these thoughts, gradually, he realized that the scene before his eyes had become increasingly clear. The path of cultivation that was originally somewhat blurry slowly became clear. The Supreme Tao stage. For the first time, Qin Wushuang had a feeling of eagerness to try the Supreme Tao stage. The exquisite, mysterious boundary stage was only a stepping stone, a bridge. Qin Wushuang firmly believed that if he could shatter the void and enter the exquisite, mysterious boundary stage, it would certainly be much easier to make a dash for the Supreme Tao stage. It was because his body and primordial spirit had been prepared for the Supreme Tao stage since the beginning after the baptism of the Supreme Tao light. In other words, the Supreme Tao stage was his designated destination. Only, he had finally arrived at this moment. Whoosh! Another 10 days had passed. Qin Wushuang opened his eyes and felt that the air on this island was truly refreshing. He had passed a second island like this. Up to this moment, Qin Wushuang had not even felt any real threat. Through the transportation platform, he had arrived at the third island. This time, the number of people who had been disqualified was in the double digits. Out of the original 74 people, 2 had been disqualified on the first island and 11 on the second island. In total, the third person had been disqualified. 61 people were left. Although a dozen people had been disqualified, overall, they had not suffered any serious injuries. In fact, the true competition for the core had yet to begin. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chijian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 688. The 3 islands in the first level could be said to be uneventful. Besides those contestants who appeared to be incompetent, all those who were slightly favored had advanced to the next level, which would be the fourth to the sixth islands. At this level, the difficulty would increase by a lot. According to the estimation of the organizer, at least 2/3 of the contestants would drop out at the second level. There would not be more than 25 contestants who could enter the third level. And the 3 islands in the third level, which would be the 7th to the 9th islands, would be the most tragic battlefield. It was highly possible that all the spots would be decided at this level. Qin Wushuang did not encounter any danger at the third island. In this 1 month, his understanding of training had increased a lot. Sharpening the axe would not delay the work of cutting firewood. Qin Wushuang felt that this 1 month of comprehension would be extremely beneficial for his future training path. The time limit for the 3 islands in the second level was 20 days. In other words, it would take 2 months. At this level, all the contestants would do their own thing and were not allowed to attack each other. Therefore, it was peaceful between them and there were no abnormalities. Another 20 days had passed. All the powerhouses that did not participate in the competition had gathered next to the illusion heavenly lake. Each day, they would come with anticipation and worry. Of course, they were looking forward to the people of their own sect being invincible all the way to the last stop. And of course, they were worried about the people of their own sect being eliminated. Second Chief, today is the end of the 4th island. In the first 3 islands, more than 20 people were eliminated. This time, I estimate that the number of eliminated people will suddenly increase to about 40. Qin Hao asked with a smile. Qin Yunran nodded. From the 3rd to the 4th island, the level has changed. For sure, the difficulty will fluctuate greatly. Perhaps there will be a lot of people escaping. For now, we don't need to worry about senior brother and junior brother Wushuang. Qin Jining was extremely confident. For the 4th island, he was not worried about Qin Taichong and Qin Wushuang. While they were talking, the eliminated disciples had already been sent back to the transportation platform. Each of them walked out dejectedly. Indeed, a dozen people had been eliminated from the 4th island. In total, 42 people had been eliminated from the 74 people. In other words, as soon as they passed the 4th floor, more than half of the contestants were eliminated. Ha! Look, isn't that Yin Qi of the Heavenly Punishing Villa? Ha! And Lei Gun of the Sound of Thunder Sect. Qin Hongyin's eyes were sharp as he laughed. This Heavenly Punishing Villa and the Sound of Thunder Sect are really useless. He was eliminated. Isn't that Xian Wufeng? He's also been eliminated. It's actually true. Qin Hao also saw it and shouted. He jeered. Isn't the Heavenly Emperor Gate very arrogant? TSK. He was eliminated just like that. What a coward. Although Qin Jining felt relieved, he smiled faintly and didn't say anything. Inwardly, he thought that if junior brother Wushuang had not appeared and he had gone to participate, perhaps he would have been eliminated in this round. Xian Wufeng's talent and strength aren't inferior to mine. On the other side of the platform, the names of those who had been eliminated were constantly refreshed on a huge stone tablet. The names of those who were eliminated were all red. As for the names that were still inside, they were all green. All sects and clans raised their heads to look at that stone tablet. They wanted to see who were the 32 people left inside. There were a total of 37 sects, and only 32 people were left inside. There was also one sect where 2 people were not eliminated. This way, it indirectly proved that some sects had been completely annihilated and 2 people had been eliminated. Among these 32 people, those who were from the same sect were clearly the most outstanding. Wow, there are 6 powerhouses and 2 of them are not eliminated. There are still 20 people that belong to 20 different powerhouses. Powerful? Just which 6 powerhouses are they? They must be the most powerful sects, right? There must be the Heavenly Mountain sect of the extreme North Snow Zone. Then there must be the Great Bright City of the Heavenly Fire Southern Border. The Coiled Dragon clan of the Endless Eastern Sea should also have one. Each of these voices spoke with an abnormally determined tone. The Heavenly Emperor Gate of the Xianyuan Mound should also be in the list, right? This voice appeared somewhat lacking in confidence. Indeed, as soon as he spoke these words, he was berated by the people next to him. Friend, it seems you don't have good eyesight. The Heavenly Emperor Xian clan has already eliminated one. Is that so? I didn't notice it a moment ago. If the Heavenly Emperor Gate can't do it, could it be there is no powerhouse in the Xian Yuan Mound that has not eliminated two people? How could there not be? The Xian Yuan Mound has two houses. What two houses? Isn't that right? On the disqualified list, have you seen the disciples of the Qin clan and the Yun clan? Yeah, I really haven't seen them. These people spoke one after another and pointed at them. All of them had an incredibly complicated mood. Some were feeling pity, some were feeling excited, some were rejoicing in others' misfortune, and some were wringing their wrists and sighing deeply. Qin Hongyan gave a long sigh. It seems the Yun clan is not bad. Two people have not been disqualified. However, I still think highly of senior brother Taichung and junior brother Wu Shuang. Yes, that's for sure. I guess they will both enter the top 10. Qin Hao is also full of confidence. When he spoke these words, of course he could not refrain from encountering countless doubtful looks from the side. Qin Hao chuckled and did not feel guilty. He raised the corner of his mouth proudly and shot a glance at the Xian clan to show off his power. The ordeal of the fifth island had already started like a raging fire. All the candidates that had not been disqualified had already started to work hard for the top 10 spots on the fifth island. For the Qin clan, Qin Taichung was the most powerful. At this fifth island, he had suffered some losses. However, it was not too dangerous. Perhaps Qin Wushuang was one of the few people that did not feel any pressure. It was because Qin Wushuang had already summoned the spiritual beasts at the perfect void martial stage to protect him. With 3 spiritual beasts at the perfect void martial stage, naturally Qin Wushuang did not need to worry too much. In these 20 days, he still immersed himself in training wholeheartedly. Shatter the void, have a miraculous form and soul, merge with the Tao. These 12 words were truly vivid and lifelike. Have a miraculous form and soul, merge with the Tao. Ha ha! Qin Wushuang remembered the first time he had witnessed the power of the exquisite, mysterious boundary stage. It was at the Crest Mountain when he met Mu Rong Qianji, his future father-in-law. He had completely ignored the rules of space and shattered the void. In the blink of an eye, he had arrived before him to kill. Of course, this was not completely ignoring the rules of space. He had only used his powerful stage effectively to evade the rules of space ingeniously. He had even surpassed the rules of space. Just as Mu Rong Qianji had said, when a supreme Tao elite warrior reached a certain level, they could surpass the rules. However, they could not create the rules. For an elite warrior at the peak of the common mysterious stage like Mu Rong Qianji, at most, he could only evade the rules skillfully. To surpass the rules, Mu Rong Qianji's strength was not enough. At least, one must be at the supreme Tao stage to surpass the rules. It was as if the divine soul had not died and could surpass the rules of life and death. Qin Wushuang pondered. Indeed, this exquisite, mysterious boundary stage and the supreme Tao stage were inextricably linked. However, in terms of essence, there was still a fatal difference. The exquisite, mysterious boundary stage could only be said to be on the path of the supreme Tao. Those supreme divine skills and power possessed by the supreme Tao stage, the exquisite, mysterious boundary stage might not possess them. Now, I am at the perfect void martial stage. I need to comprehend the rules, open up a path between the heaven and earth, shatter the void, comprehend the rules of space, and merge with the great Tao. Yes, that's it. Qin Wushuang's spiritual perception was greatly moved, as if he had caught a trace of inspiration. Open up a path, shatter the void. Qin Wushuang raised his arm lightly and slashed with the center of his palm. Whoosh, like a cutting machine, a hand blade slashed out a miserable ripple mark in the void. No, this is not enough. Qin Wushuang shook his head. Another slash. It was still not enough. Qin Wushuang shook his head and opened his eyes widely, as if he had caught a trace of inspiration. Yet, it did not seem to be accurate. He kept gesturing with his palm like a knife. After slashing thousands of times in the sky, Qin Wushuang always felt that there was a layer of barrier that he had not comprehended. What is it? There was a trace of doubt in Qin Wushuang's mind. He had a premonition that he might be able to break through this barrier, shatter the void, and truly enter that exquisite, mysterious boundary stage. The exquisite, mysterious boundary stage was a bridge, the path before the door of the Supreme Tao. Clearly, the difficulty of the fifth island was not small. However, compared to the large number of people who were eliminated on the fourth island, there were fewer people who were eliminated on the fifth island. After 20 days, only 7 people were eliminated due to various reasons. At this point, luck was extremely low. Strength began to take the main position. Regardless of the danger, those with strong strength could deal with it calmly. For those with weaker strength, they could not help but feel powerless under the sudden situation. They could only activate the transportation jade plate and get eliminated. After subtracting the 7 people who were eliminated on the fifth island, only 25 people remained from the 32. When they entered the sixth island, only 25 people remained. This time, among the 6 powerhouses with unbroken golden bodies, 2 of them had broken the golden body and 1 of them had been eliminated. This way, among the 25 people, only 4 sects had maintained 2 spots that had not been eliminated. They were the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan from the Xian Yuan Mound, the Heavenly Mountain sect from the extreme North Snow Zone, the Great Bright City from the Heavenly Fire southern border, and the Horned Dragon clan from the Endless Eastern Sea. Among the 6 major Taoist sects of the Illusion Heavenly Lake, there were no more sects with unbroken golden bodies. As for Yun Zhonghe from the Yun clan, he was unfortunately eliminated from this island. He had caused the Yun clan to break their golden body. Shang Yi of the Coil Dragon clan had also been disqualified. However, Sumi was abnormally firm as she continued to move forward. Shang Yi did not feel inferior. With his cultivation base and his foundation from the human countries, he was already very satisfied to be able to participate in such a grand event. Being eliminated this time could also stimulate him to work hard in the direction of becoming stronger. When Shang Yi learned that Qin Wushuang was still in the competition, he was also happy for Qin Wushuang. Besides Sumi, he had another person to support. Currently, Qin Wushuang was already searching for his own training place on the sixth island. He knew that perhaps this was the last period of peaceful days for this ordeal. After passing the sixth island, it would be the 3rd level of the ordeal. After entering the 7th island, the candidates could attack each other. In that case, most likely it would be impossible to train in peace. To be continued, if you want to know the future, please log on to www.chidian.com. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 689. These 20 days passed by peacefully. Of course, this peacefulness was only for Qin Wushuang. After all, with so many sealed spiritual beasts standing guard, those ferocious spiritual beasts on the island also knew their place and did not come to cause trouble. Even the ferocious spiritual beasts on the island bullied the weak and feared the strong. However, for those cultivators who did not have enough trump cards, the 6th island was a bitter and tearful experience. In this level, another 11 of the 25 contestants were disqualified. In other words, after the first 2 levels, 60 of the 74 people had been disqualified. Only 14 contestants were left to enter the 3rd level. This disqualification rate was truly astonishing. Since there were 14 contestants left, naturally the top 10 spots could not be decided temporarily. Therefore, the 60 people that were disqualified were destined to be the role of the Crown Prince. They had no chance with that reward. What made Qin Yunran feel gratified was that the Qin clan had become the only powerhouse with an unbroken golden body. In other words, at the 6th island, the other 3 powerhouses with an unbroken golden body all had contestants disqualified. Currently, among the 14 spots, only Qin Wushuang and Qin Taichong came from the same sect. To the Qin clan, this was definitely good news. It was because according to the rules, after reaching the 7th island, contestants from the same sect could form an alliance. The people of the Qin clan on the outside cheered. Especially Qin Hao and Qin Hongyan, they were in high spirits. They had a feeling of elation as if they had turned the tables and become the master. However, Qin Jining was not as happy as they had imagined. He frowned slightly and looked at the final 14 people list with a somewhat solemn expression. Jining, what do you see? Qin Yunran asked with a smile. I want to see if there are any other powerhouses that have kept 2 spots, Qin Jining said honestly. Of course not. Only our Qin clan. Ha ha. Qin Hao said happily, and his tone was full of pride. He had completely forgotten the old matter of him and Qin Shaohong going to cause a dispute with Qin Wushuang. At this moment, regardless of Qin Hao or Qin Hongyan, they were abnormally proud. They were proud of Qin Wushuang and Qin Taichung, especially when they were surrounded by people looking at them with envious eyes. That sense of belonging and honor of their clan made them feel incredibly comfortable. Their entire bodies seemed to have become much lighter, as if they were in the clouds. I do hope that there are other forces that can keep 2 spots. Qin Jining sighed and shook his head. Oh, Qin Yunran looked at Qin Jining with a faint smile. Although Qin Yunran liked excitement and liked Qin Taichung's forthright personality more, he was also very interested in Qin Jining, who was willing to use his brain. Jining, tell me, why did you say that? Qin Jining said, among the 14 spots, only senior brother Taichung and junior brother Wushuang came from the same sect. This is too outstanding. Unconsciously, the other powerhouses will view the Qin clan as an imaginary enemy. This way, senior brother Taichung and junior brother Wushuang would easily become the target of the other contestants. The tallest tree in the forest will be destroyed by the wind. For such ordeal competition, if those contestants feel that the Qin clan is their greatest threat, certainly they will treat the Qin clan as the target. Everyone will form a form of mutual understanding and target senior brother and junior brother Wushuang unconsciously. This way, although those people do not form an alliance, they will form a mutual understanding to deal with senior brother and junior brother Wushuang. Their situation will become even more difficult. As soon as he said these words, Qin Hao and Qin Hongyan were dumbstruck. They were all smart people and not stupid. Upon hearing Qin Jining's analysis, they could not help but nod. Clearly, they felt it was reasonable. Jining is right. Those people will certainly do it. Hot topic, hot topic, hot topic, they will die. Qin Hao whispered, Pa pa pa. You jinx, how can you say that? Qin Hongyan said with dissatisfaction, I still believe senior brother and junior brother Wushuang. Even if those people form a mutual understanding, they cannot join hands without any grudges. Or else, they will be breaking the rules. As long as they use the strategy well and grasp the initiative, it's not impossible to achieve a breakthrough. Second Chief, don't you think so? Qin Yunran laughed. Let's just wait and see. Qin Hao and Qin Hongyan looked at Qin Yunran curiously. Second Chief, how come you're not worried at all? Qin Yunran laughed. It's already a great success for them to both enter the 3rd level ordeal island. Even if they encounter any accidents, I will not blame them. If they are truly defeated under the situation Jining mentioned, it's an honorable defeat, isn't it? Yes. Let's see if they dare to be so shameless. Qin Hao said angrily. Qin Jining gave a slight sigh. I only hope senior brother and junior brother Wushuang can recognize this point clearly. If they are mentally prepared with the size of the island, they can do something. 2 people will always be safer than 1 person. On the transportation platform of the 6th island, 14 pairs of eyes sized each other up with alertness. Clearly, at this point, they were all core competitors. When they arrived at the next island, it would not be the same as before. Instead, they would face cruel battles and battles. The competition between each other would be even more vicious, and they would use all sorts of methods. Therefore, when they looked at each other, there were more alertness in their eyes and less friendliness. Qin Wushuang remained calm and collected. His eyelids drooped as if he was meditating. He also did not talk to Qin Taichung. If he were to talk to Qin Taichung now, he would attract attention. Most importantly, this transportation formation would transport them randomly. They would not be transported to the same location in the beginning. Therefore, it would be useless to say anything now. When the transportation formation was activated, With a flash of light, 14 figures formed into 14 meteoric lights and shot into the island 10,000 miles away. The surface area of this island would not lose to that 10,000 flower valley. As soon as Qin Wushuang dropped into the island, he immediately swept away the casual and calm appearance of the previous 6 islands. On the contrary, he was like a leopard as his eyes were filled with a form of wild desire. He knew that it was time for him to get serious. When he arrived at the 7th island, it would not work to play it safe. It was because even if you did not offend others, others would offend you. No opponent would watch you pass the trial safely. If you let your opponent pass, you would be irresponsible to yourself. The communication jade plate was definitely not allowed to be used here. Otherwise, it would be encouraging the formation of cliques. Therefore, Qin Wushuang could not contact Qin Taichung through the communication jade plate. However, even though the communication jade plate could not be used, it did not mean that Qin Wushuang had no way to contact Qin Taichung. On the contrary, he had a unique treasure, the observant finger jade plate. When the jade plate was activated, Qin Wushuang realized that Qin Taichung was at least 3,000 miles away from him. However, Qin Wushuang was not worried. As long as nothing happened before he met Qin Taichung, he was confident that he could join hands with Senior Taichung to pass through this 7th island. The island of the 3rd level had an upper limit of 30 days. Qin Wushuang was not distracted as he observed the movement of the jade plate. He activated the purple cloud Yin Yang wings and flew towards the direction of Qin Taichung. Although the prohibition formation on the island was powerful, it did not restrict flying. When Qin Wushuang activated the purple cloud Yin Yang wings, his speed was still magnificent and impressive. However, Qin Wushuang did not exert all his efforts. On the contrary, he needed to be on guard against the schemes from all parties at all times. Under such situation, Qin Wushuang was not an idiot. He could also think of the things that Qin Jining had thought of. Therefore, the most urgent matter was to regroup with senior brother Qin Taichung. As long as the two of them regrouped, regardless of the difficult situation, Qin Wushuang would have the confidence to deal with it. His greatest trump card was the observant finger jade plate and the sealed divine beast. However, for these trump cards, Qin Wushuang did not plan to use them all at once. Breaking through the 7th island was not Qin Wushuang's final goal. Clearly, it would not be wise to use all his trump cards at once. Near a precipitous canyon, a devilish man dressed in green from head to toe was lying in ambush among the green thickets. He looked down with a devilish gaze. Humph! That giant man in gray is Qin Taichung of the Qin clan. 2 people from the Qin clan have entered the 7th island. This is not a good thing. Let me, Xiao Lu, serve everyone for free. This devilish man was called Xiao Lu and came from a powerhouse at the Heavenly Fire southern border. He excelled at transformation and concealment and was an elite warrior of the half-beast human clan. This Xiao Lu excelled at using the terrain and his own transformation ability to ambush the enemy. Now, he locked the target of his ambush onto Qin Taichung. Clearly, it was also because he realized that the 2 spots from the Qin clan would become the biggest stumbling block for him to aim for the championship. Therefore, he must create a fair environment. At least, he must let the 2 spots from the Qin clan become one. In that case, he would feel more at ease. Or else, the advantage of having more people would always be the biggest hidden danger. Currently, Qin Taichung was walking in the valley. He did not possess any special skills in terms of body movements. Therefore, he did not bother to use those concealment methods. Qin Taichung's forte was head-on combat. It was high-intensity resistance and actual combat ability. It was impossible for him to abandon his forte and learn from others. However, at this moment, he was also thinking that it would be better if he could regroup with junior brother Wushuang. Therefore, he did not conceal his presence. Clearly, he also wanted to attract Qin Wushuang to regroup with him. At the same time, he also searched around with his spiritual perception in hopes of sensing Qin Wushuang's presence. Suddenly, the root of Qin Taichung's ears moved. Like an arrow, he retreated backwards abruptly. As if stepping on the Big Dipper, his feet glided out. He waved the giant sword from his hand in the air and sealed it before his chest. With a flash of green light, a powerful defensive wall blocked a ball of green air. When that ball of green air clashed with his sword aura, instantly it dispersed and filled the sky. "Who is it?" Qin Taichung gave a loud shout and placed the giant sword horizontally in the sky with an imposing manner. For a time, like a god descending to the mortal world, he swept across all directions with a gaze as deep as lightning. There was no sound in the surroundings. Suddenly, there was a slight fluctuation under Qin Taichung's feet. Countless long vine-like tentacles actually spread out from the bushes in all directions. They kept wrapping around his feet and kept locking the space where he was standing. Devilish things. Qin Taichung gave a violent shout and waved the giant sword from his hand madly. With continuous sword aura, a dozen long vines were broken into pieces inch by inch and danced in the sky. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.chidian.com. More chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 690. Being the undisputed #1 person of the Qin clan for many years, Qin Taichung's strength was indeed impressive. Although he was slightly inferior to Xian Wuji, he was still an elite warrior of the exquisite, mysterious boundary stage. Plus, with his majestic combat power, he could often draw in that ball of awe-inspiring righteousness. Once he entered a state of battle, his combat power would explode with astonishing methods. Therefore, even for the proud Xian Wuji in the past, he must view Qin Taichung as his greatest potential threat among the Heavenly Emperor 8 Gates. Only, Qin Taichung's strong points lay in head-on attacks and valiant combat power. His weakness was due to this outstanding advantage. In the end, he was slightly inferior in terms of scheming. That Xiao LV was scheming. In fact, he had calculated each step of the mechanism. After Qin Taichung blocked the first 2 attacks, the third wave came again. Suddenly, the trees in all directions seemed to have moved and kept crashing towards Qin Taichung's direction. Inwardly, Qin Taichung felt apprehensive. What kind of sorcery is this? However, in the end, Qin Taichung was an awe-inspiring person. He swept with the giant sword and roared, "Open for me!" Bursts of sword lights sounded like the howling of the wind demon or the sorrowful roar of an angry dragon. Under the green lights, those trees kept cutting into 2 sections. Among the countless trees, Xiao LV's figure was hidden inside the trunk of one of the trees. He held a dark green dagger in his hand. On top of the dagger, there was a gloomy green poisonous light. "Go!" Like a poisonous snake, countless long vines kept entangling Qin Taichung. Xiao LV waved that green dagger casually, and it transformed into the shape of a long vine. Mixed among the countless long vines, it did not have any place that stood out. Qin Taichung was in dire straits. The long vines from all directions kept increasing. The long vine transformed by the dagger just happened to entangle his ribs, the part that was the hardest to defend. Qin Taichung had no idea that among these long vines, there was a poisonous blade that was enough to take his life. Xiao LV laughed. He was also an expert. How could he not see that Qin Taichung did not even realize this blade attack, not to mention evading it? "Ha! What?" Before the smile on the corner of Xiao LV's mouth could expand, all of a sudden, he opened his eyes widely. From the sky, a burst of meteoric light shot down. With a flash of earthy yellow light, it fell on Qin Taichung's waist. Clang! With a crisp sound of collision, the green dagger collided with the earthen yellow light, and both of them returned to their original forms. The dagger was still a dagger, but the divine Dao shield had turned back into a divine Dao shield. Senior Taichung grabbed the whip. Qin Wushuang whizzed past and grabbed the supreme Dao shield with one arm. With a swing of his right hand, the soul of the Fury Dragon was shot towards Qin Taichung. "Junior brother Wushuang?" When Qin Taichung saw Qin Wushuang, he grabbed the whip without thinking. With a kick of his feet, he had already jumped out of the attacking circle. Qin Wushuang's figure also flew backwards and landed in front of Qin Taichung. He stared at a big tree and said coldly, "Come out, the guy who stabbed me in the back." Qin Taichung's gaze locked onto the trunk of that big tree. He roared angrily, "Ignorant man, do you dare to fight me face to face?" While he was talking, he shook his arms and slashed 3 times in a row. Drawing in the sky, 3 giant sword blade shapes slashed towards that big tree trunk. Xiao Lu almost thought he had succeeded in his sneak attack on Qin Taichung. Unexpectedly, a calamity had suddenly appeared. He immediately used the wood attribute escape technique to flee towards the forest in the distance. When Qin Taichung was about to give chase, Qin Wushuang called out to stop him, "Senior brother, don't be in a rush." Before Qin Wushuang's voice had dropped, suddenly a miserable cry came from afar. Suddenly, Xiao Lu's voice sounded extremely painful. "You plotted against me?" A cold voice said indifferently, "If you don't want to die, activate the transportation jade plate and get out immediately. If you don't get the antidote from my sect within 24 hours, you are dead for sure." Xiao Lu said miserably, "You are ruthless. How would I know which sect you are from?" That person gave a cold sneer. "You want to trick me? After you get out, naturally my fellow disciples will see your injuries. Are you going to get out or not?" It was too late for Xiao Lu to regret, yet he could do nothing. Inwardly, he was filled with regret. If he had not been possessed to deal with Qin Taichung, how could he have fallen into this trap? When it came to using poison, who was Xiao Lu afraid of? However, the mantis stalks the cicada, unaware of the oriole behind. While Xiao Lu was concerned about Qin Taichung, he did not expect that other people would also be concerned about him. In this ordeal island, they were all opponents. They did not promise that they would not make a move against Xiao Lu. Therefore, the first person to be disqualified on the 7th island was Xiao Lu, who excelled in using poison to ambush. Qin Wushuang glared at that direction and was stunned. Qin Wushuang sent his voice to him, "Senior brother, let's go." Qin Taichung nodded and left with Qin Wushuang in quick steps. "Junior brother Wushuang, hold on." When Qin Taichung saw Qin Wushuang walking around aimlessly, he could not help but feel somewhat confused. He called out to Qin Wushuang, "Senior brother Taichung, what's wrong?" Qin Wushuang stopped his footsteps. "Where are we going?" Qin Taichung was somewhat confused. "Besides, if we walk around aimlessly, it's easy to get ambushed." Qin Wushuang said with a smile, "Senior brother, please trust me and follow me. I promise we will not get ambushed." "Oh," Qin Taichung laughed. "Junior brother Wushuang, you're this sure?" "Senior brother, if I'm not sure, how could I find you?" Qin Wushuang also laughed. "Don't worry. Now besides Xiao Lu who left here, there are 11 other people. The closest one is about 500 miles away from us. This place is absolutely safe. Of course, the unstable factors on the island are not included in the calculation." When Qin Taichung saw him speaking as if he was serious, he rubbed his nose and said with a bitter smile, "Junior brother Wushuang, it's all thanks to you. Or else, I would have become the first person to be disqualified on the 7th island. Senior brother, this is the rule. We can form an alliance between people from the same sect. This is our advantage. Don't say it's a loss." Qin Taichung laughed. "That's right, Wushuang. This time only the 2 of us are from the same sect. There are advantages and disadvantages. When I saw that Xiao Lu fixed his eyes on me, the others should also have the same mutual understanding. Certainly, they would not allow the Qin clan to have too obvious of an advantage." Qin Wushuang cast away his mouth and said with a light smile, "This is human nature. However, senior brother, on this island, it's hard to say who is the hunter and who is the prey." Qin Taichung raised his thick eyebrow and revealed a surprised and joyful expression. "Junior brother Wushuang, could be you have some plans?" Qin Wushuang raised the corner of his mouth and also revealed a calm and confident smile. "Senior brother, since the situation has allowed the 2 of us to enter this final battle, regardless, we must use all our efforts to get a ranking. My goal is for both of us to make it to the top 4. If it's possible, we will take that championship in one go." Qin Taichung was overjoyed. A rich desire to compete shot out from his pair of big eyes and increased his vigor dramatically. Junior brother Wu Shuang, how do we implement exactly? Qin Taichong asked emotionally. Qin Wu Shuang revealed a mysterious smile. For now, let's not do anything. Let them kill each other. Let's see how many people will enter the next island after the 7th island. Do nothing? Qin Taichong could not understand. Since we are going to be hunters, why should we do nothing? Could it be we are waiting for them to hunt us? Senior brother, they cannot get close to us. Qin Wu Shuang said with a card up his sleeve. The true hunter will step out at the end. We are not hunting for the opponents, but the championship. When he said this, Qin Wu Shuang's eyes were full of confidence. That's right, the championship. 2 supreme Dao fruits, 1 set of armor, and 1 supreme Dao weapon. Additionally, he would help senior brother Taichong to make a dash for the top 4. He must unleash the advantage of the 2 of them working together to the extreme. Not only could he let senior brother Taichong enter the top 4, he must win with dignity and beauty. To put it bluntly, Qin Wu Shuang's strategy was to watch the tigers fight from a distance. When the sandpiper and the clam fought, the fishermen would reap the benefits. Of course, to ensure that Qin Wu Shuang could implement this strategy, the prerequisite was the observant finger jade plate. Without this miraculous treasure, it would be impossible for Qin Wu Shuang to watch the tigers fight from a distance. If he could not lock onto the position of the enemy, he would not know when the next crisis would appear. Each of the opponents that were able to reach this step possessed consummate skills. None of them were just there to make up the numbers. Once the enemy was in the dark while he was in the light, no one could guarantee that he would be fine if he was ambushed. Therefore, the observant finger jade plate was the key. One must say that Qin Wu Shuang's strategy was extremely intelligent and practical. Initially, Qin Taichong felt somewhat confused. Yet after 10 days, or half a month, Qin Taichong realized that indeed, this junior brother Wu Shuang was full of surprises. One after another, people were disqualified, yet they were safe and sound. It was as if the entire battle situation had nothing to do with them. 30 days had passed. The battle of the 7th island had also announced the end. Although this pass was cruel, bloody, and full of scheming, only 4 people were truly disqualified. All of them were eliminated by their competitors. In other words, none of the candidates were disqualified by the dangers inside the island. A total of 10 people were left. In other words, the 10 people that entered the 8th island would be the 10 candidates that would receive rewards. Regardless of the final ranking, these 10 people would receive rewards. The Qin clan was still enchanting. Among the 10 spots, 2 of them were from the Qin clan. Naturally, this became the topic that everyone took delight in talking about. In the following battles, the 2 people from the same sect held too great of an advantage. Now, there were already some voices guessing in secret whether or not the Qin clan would monopolize the 1st and 2nd place. Although such voices were not active, they had already begun to show signs of it. However, those sects that possessed truly exceptional geniuses did not consider it to be the case. They were incredibly confident in their disciples. They all felt that the championship would belong to none other than their own sect. The 5 totem elite warriors were also discussing this pageant in a certain area. Chief Snow Cicada was the first to speak. Xian Yuan Dao's friend, this heavenly emperor Qin clan is truly surprising. Just what is going on with this Qin Wu Shuang? Where did he come from? These people truly did not know the background of Qin Wu Shuang. After all, Qin Wu Shuang had only stepped onto the path of martial arts for a short period of time. Another totem elite warrior gave a long sigh. The most terrifying part is that from beginning to end, this Qin Wu Shuang did not make a move. It was as if this battle was unrelated to him. Brother Ba, it seems that most likely the championship will be taken away by people of the Xian Yuan Mound. Xian Yuan Ba chuckled. Don't say it this way. Regardless of Qin Wu Shuang or Qin Taichong, their strength is not as good as those 4 exceptional geniuses. To speak the truth, I am truly surprised that Xian Wuji is dead. Initially, Xian Wuji should have competed for the championship with those 4 exceptional geniuses. The affairs of the world are unpredictable. They activated the transportation formation and entered the 8th island. Each time after the transportation, Qin Wushuang and Qin Taichung must not be separated temporarily. This was also the most probable period of vacuum in their alliance. Qin Wushuang took out the observant finger jade plate and started to lock onto Qin Taichung's position skillfully. At this moment, suddenly his complexion changed. April, I finally finished it. Wahaha, so comfortable. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.chidian.com. More chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 691. Through the observant finger jade plate, he could clearly see that there were 3 people less than 100 miles away from him. Besides, these 3 people seemed to have formed a tacit understanding as they approached Qin Wushuang's direction. They formed a T-shaped formation and appeared to be surrounding him. The teleportation array's teleportation was random. How could these 3 people be so coincidentally close to him? Could it be they had formed some kind of mutual understanding? Qin Wushuang was incredibly meticulous. When he saw such abnormal situation, inwardly, he was already on guard. Of course, he would not be stupid enough to challenge these 3 people. He revealed a slight smile and urged the purple cloud Yin-Yang wings to lock onto Qin Taichung's position. Then, he flew over quickly. At the same time, he paid attention to the position of those 3 people from the observant finger jade plate. Sure enough, the positions of those 3 people moved as he moved. Qin Wushuang twitched the corner of his mouth as he laughed inwardly. It seems that the observant finger jade plate is not an exclusive method. Initially, Xi and Wuji was able to lock onto my position. Among these opponents, there are a few that are on par with Xi and Wuji. Since Xi and Wuji has that skill, it's not strange that these people can lock onto my position. Qin Wushuang was not a newbie that had just stepped onto the path of martial arts. After some slight thinking, he guessed some clues. These potential opponents must have viewed the Qin clan as their greatest opponent. Therefore, they had formed such mutual understanding to surround and attack them. It seems that the intention of these opponents was clear. They wanted to kick the Qin clan away in this pass. It was not strange. Since the Qin clan had 2 people, naturally they were viewed as the most popular candidates to win the championship. Naturally, the most popular candidates would easily arouse a common enemy. This time, Qin Wushuang had learned his lesson. It was because previously, Qin Wushuang had told him not to wander around when he arrived at the 8th island. He was to find a safe place to wait. Therefore, Qin Taichung did not wander around. He found a relatively safe place and waited quietly for the arrival of Qin Wushuang. While flying in the middle of the air, Qin Wushuang did not forget to look at the observant finger jade plate at all times. Before entering the 8th island, Qin Wushuang had already collected the spiritual perception and presence of all opponents. Therefore, all the opponents could be clearly displayed on the observant finger jade disc. Especially the 3 people from before, they still chased after him relentlessly. Because of their positions, one of them was only 100 miles away from him. As for the other 2, he shook them off. A distance of 100 li? Qin Wushuang's heart skipped a beat. Since he was alone, he might as well make a deal here. These 3 fellows want to make a move on me, so I'll start with him first. Thinking of this, Qin Wushuang took out the sealed scroll. Now at the top 10 battlefield. Naturally, Qin Wushuang would not summon those spiritual beasts at the Void Martial stage. Instead, he summoned the 4 spiritual beasts at the exquisite mysterious boundary stage. Qin Wushuang knew that no matter how strong the other party was, the most they could do was lock onto Qin Wushuang's position. It was impossible for them to lock onto the sealed spirit beast. This was because the sealed spirit beast had always been sealed and had never come out. On this battlefield, the sealed spirit beast and the observant finger jade disc were Qin Wushuang's 2 greatest weapons. Only by unleashing these 2 greatest weapons to the extreme would he have the hope to aim for the final crown. After all, initially it was already difficult to deal with Xi and Wuji. On this battlefield, there were 3 or 4 people that were on par with Xi and Wuji. Qin Wushuang dropped from the cloud and sat down among the grass and trees next to a small stream. That opponent did not conceal himself as he scuttled towards him at an incomparable speed. Qin Wushuang felt somewhat strange. If this person wanted to deal with him, this formation was too powerful. Could it be he had the certainty to win? Or else, at the very least, he should hide his tracks? Qin Wushuang was extremely puzzled. However, since the other party was acting this way, he could not pretend to be ignorant. He stood up directly and said lightly, "Who is it?" Something unexpected happened to Qin Wushuang. From the forest before him, a figure flashed out and let out a straightforward laugh. "Junior brother Wushuang, I've been waiting for you for a long time." The person that had come was Qin Taichung. Indeed, it was Qin Taichung. He carried a broadsword and walked over in large strides. In between his brows, a forthright smile was also filled. It was clearly Qin Taichung's style. Qin Wushuang also smiled. "Senior brother Taichung, indeed it's you. I thought it was some blind guy who wanted to sneak an attack on me. There was no need to be this brazen." "Ha ha. It's because they did not have eyes to sneak an attack on Junior Brother Wushuang. By the way, Junior Brother Wushuang, since we have arrived at this 8th island, we should make a move to hunt, right? I know where 2 guys are hiding." "Humph, they think they are well hidden. However, on this island, how could there be an absolutely hidden place?" Qin Wushuang was overjoyed. "Where?" Qin Taichung laughed. "One of them is in a mountain cave in a northwest direction, and the other one seems to be in the underground abyss." "Junior brother Wushuang, which one should we hit first?" "Which one do you think is suitable, senior brother Taichung?" Qin Taichung was stunned and then laughed. "That mountain cave is the most suitable for besieging. I think it's better to hit the first one." Qin Wushuang nodded. "Then let's hit the first one." "Okay, follow me," Qin Taichung called out. Suddenly, Qin Wushuang said, "Senior brother, hold on." Qin Taichung was stunned as he turned around. "Junior brother Wushuang, what's wrong?" Qin Wushuang said with a smile. "A moment ago on the way, I discovered a fruit with rich spiritual qi. I would like to ask you to appraise it and see if it's a supreme Tao fruit. There should not be any supreme Tao fruit on this island, right?" "Supreme Tao fruit?" Qin Taichung's brows moved, and he immediately became interested. "Where is it? Let me see." "This island is a forbidden place of the illusion heavenly lake. Perhaps there are supreme Tao fruits." Qin Wushuang held out his palm, and a sparkling and translucent fruit, as white as jade, glittered in the center of his palm. It emitted resplendent and dazzling lights. "Senior brother, come take a look. I feel its presence is rich." Immediately, Qin Taichung's eyes became blurred. He narrowed his eyes into a line and shot out a form of fanatical look. "Yes, I dare to bet that this must be the supreme Tao fruit. Junior brother Wushuang, do you mind letting me take a look?" Qin Wushuang waved his hand and said with a smile, "Senior brother, aren't you treating me as an outsider by saying these words? Come take a look." Qin Taichung did not hold back as he walked over in large strides. Qin Wushuang flipped his palm and handed over that supreme Tao fruit. Qin Wushuang extended his hand to take it. At this moment, Qin Wushuang suddenly flipped his palm, and that supreme Tao fruit burrowed into his storage ring with a burst of white light. Qin Taichung's expression changed, and suddenly, he felt a burst of slight numbness from the center of his palm. Next, this wave of numbness immediately spread throughout his entire body. Qin Wushuang's body moved like lightning and had already retreated 60 meters away. A faint smile overflowed from the corner of his mouth. "Senior brother Taichung, I must admit that your disguise is very successful." The expression of that senior brother Taichung changed drastically, and sweat could not help but emerge from his forehead. When he urged his dantian, he realized that his dantian could not be lifted. He urged it 3 times in a row, and still, it was like a stone sinking into the sea. He could not lift any spiritual qi at all. From the eyes that looked at Qin Wushuang, there was an obvious trace of fear. "This is the poison of the 7 insects and 7 flowers ointment. The formula for the antidote is here." Qin Wushuang raised his hand and shot a paper ball over. That person caught it and opened it to look in an embarrassed state. Cold sweat could not help but emerge from his forehead. Follow this formula to make the antidote, and you will be fine. However, you must seize the time. If you pass the time limit, perhaps your dantian will be ruined. Qin Wushuang was not speaking alarmist words to scare him. The 7 insects and 7 flowers ointment was only one type of divine venomous poison. Its toxicity was not overbearing, yet could make one lose all their power. Unless it was an elite warrior of the Supreme Tao stage who had a layer of Supreme Tao protection wall near their dantian, they could protect their dantian from being invaded. Unfortunately, among all the participants, there was not a single elite warrior of the Supreme Tao. The strongest one was at the peak of the common mysterious stage, like Xian Wuji. That person's face was ashen. Although he was unreconciled, the corner of his mouth could not help but squirm. In the end, he gave a helpless sigh. All right, this time it's my loss. Qin Wushuang, you are good. However, I want to know, how did you see through my disguise? And how did you know I was here? Qin Wushuang asked back. That person realized the light and hid his head. He shook his head with a bitter smile. I am so stupid. Since I can use the tracking talisman to lock onto your position, you can also use the same method to lock onto each other's position. It seems that Qin Taichong is not in this area at all. Qin Wushuang chuckled. All right, there is not much time left. Hurry up. That person gave a long sigh. Qin Wushuang, when the outside world said you killed Xian Wuji, I did not really believe it. Now it seems that Xian Wuji did not die unjustly at your hands. I am from the great bright city of the heavenly fire southern border. If there is a chance, come to the great bright city as a guest. Qin Wushuang laughed. If there is a chance, of course I will pay a visit. Now, that person had walked out from the shadow of failure. He laughed. Don't worry, I am not that stingy. If you come to the great bright city, find me directly. Until we meet again, Qin Wushuang. You must win the championship. Otherwise, I, Zhu Mingbao, will feel ashamed. Ha ha ha. After he had finished speaking, Zhu Yunyan initiated the transportation jade plate. A burst of transportation divine light had sent him out of the 8th island directly. Zhu Yunyan had become the first person to be disqualified among these 10 people. Naturally, the 10th place had been determined. For this battle, Qin Wushuang had defeated Zhu Yunyan with his wits without shedding any blood. He felt incredibly lucky. This Zhu Yunyan was one of the 3 or 4 absolute elite warriors that stood shoulder to shoulder with Xian Wuji. He was also a popular figure to win the championship. If Qin Wushuang had not beat him at his own game, he would have had to make a big fuss to deal with this Zhu Yunyan. Qin Wushuang thought and said, This Zhu Yunyan excels at transformation. I can indeed change into his appearance. The heart illusion mask can easily do this. However, since this Zhu Yunyan can use the tracking talisman, it's not impossible for others to do the same. Therefore, this disguise strategy would not work. The tracking talisman was only a method used by the enemy in the dark. After Qin Wushuang had learned about it, he could have used his own presence to dissolve the talisman power of this tracking talisman. However, he did not plan to do so. It was because he felt that if this tracking talisman continued to work on him, he could continue to use it as bait. It would be extremely worthwhile. Recommended a new book, My Good Friend Dark Mountain Clouds, and Rain's latest masterpiece, Mysterious Sky Evil God. Just by looking at this name, I can guess how perverted this person is. This guy always claims to be between A and C. I don't know what's in the middle. However, this guy's new book is awesome. I only read a few chapters and fell in love with it. Besides, this guy is rushing to the new book list this week. Everyone, go support him. Ha ha ha. Yep, there's a direct link on the page. You can go there directly. I'll leave it to you, everyone. Chapter 692. After eliminating Zhu Yunyan, Qin Wushuang was not too complacent. He knew that eliminating Zhu Yunyan was just a case. In the future battles, the same thing would not happen twice. The question now is, do the others know that Zhu Yunyan has been eliminated? Qin Wushuang pondered. If the others know that I eliminated Zhu Yunyan, they will definitely be more vigilant against me. Generally speaking, when a contestant is eliminated, as long as no one witnessed it with their own eyes and spread the news, the others will not know. Unless they also used a tracking talisman on Zhu Yunyan and discovered that Zhu Yunyan's aura had disappeared. Only then would they know that Zhu Yunyan has been eliminated. Qin Wushuang was deducing the situation. However, he felt that since Zhu Yunyan knew how to use a tracking talisman, with his strength, he would definitely not let others use a tracking talisman on him. Even if someone used it, Zhu Yunyan could use his own spiritual power to refine the effect of the tracking talisman. After all, an expert at his level would definitely not be willing to be watched by others. When Qin Wushuang thought of this, he already had a rough guess in his heart. If Zhu Yunyan was not being watched, then the other contestants would not know that he was eliminated. In this way, there would be no problem of alerting the enemy. If I refine the effect of the tracking talisman, it will alert the enemy and make them be more vigilant. In this way, I will not be able to beat them at their own game and lure them to take the bait. After having an idea, Qin Wushuang quickly ran towards Qin Taichung's direction. After wasting so much time on Zhu Yunyan, Qin Wushuang was actually worried. If senior brother Qin Taichung was targeted by an expert at Zhu Yunyan's level during this period of time, then the situation would not be good. In the final 10-people finals, except for Qin Wushuang, there were 4 others who were absolutely stronger than Qin Taichung. The remaining 4 were roughly equal to Qin Taichung's strength. Without considering dirty tricks, the probability of winning was 50-50. Looking at the observant finger jade plate, it showed that Qin Taichung's situation was temporarily safe. The person closest to him was at least 300 miles away. Qin Wushuang fixed his gaze on the observant finger jade plate. It was because he realized that in this short period of time, the observant finger jade plate showed that another participant had been disqualified. The one who was eliminated was an outstanding disciple of the Illusion Heavenly Lakes Songyang Dojo. And the one who attacked him was the absolute powerhouse of the Tianshan sect in the extreme North Snow region, Ling Tianji. This Ling Tianji was also an elite warrior with absolute strength. He was at the same level as Xian Wuji. Only, this person's style was even more arrogant than Xian Wuji's. Amidst Xian Wuji's domineering arrogance, there were some traces of treachery. On the other hand, this Ling Tianji was full of domineering arrogance. However, being overbearing did not mean that this Ling Tianji was brainless. On the contrary, in terms of intelligence, this Ling Tianji was not the slightest bit weak. Only, compared to Xian Wuji's treachery, this Ling Tianji more or less had some principles. Such an opponent was not as difficult to deal with as Xian Wuji. As Ling Tianji made his move, the second person to be eliminated appeared. Naturally, the 9th place was decided. The remaining 8 continued to fight. I can see that this Ling Tianji should have started to make a move against those 5 relatively weaker opponents. I must say that Ling Tianji's strategy is extremely correct. It's because after getting rid of those 5 relatively weaker ones, the remaining 5 can lock in the top 5. Inwardly, Qin Wushuang laughed secretly. Rather, he hoped this Ling Tianji would work harder. Upon entering the 8th island, the strength was roughly divided into 2 levels. For Ling Tianji and Zhu Yunyan, there were 4 people who were on par with Xian Wuji. Plus Qin Wushuang, they formed the 1st level. Qin Taichung and the other 4 people on par with him formed the 2nd level. The number of people in each level was 5. Now, 2 of them were eliminated. However, one of them was in the 1st level and the 2nd level. In other words, among the remaining 8 contestants, there were only 4 people left in the 1st and 2nd level. The situation was becoming more interesting. With a whoosh, Qin Wushuang's figure already dropped on the open space before Qin Taichung. When Qin Taichung saw Qin Wushuang, he said with great joy, "Junior brother Wushuang, you are here." "Haha, senior brother, a guy pretended to be you a moment ago, and I kicked him out. Therefore, I am 1 step late. By the way, is the situation on your side stable?" Qin Taichung scratched his head and said with a simple and honest smile, I thought everyone had forgotten about me. It's strange that no one has made a move against me. Senior brother, 2 people have already been eliminated. Now we have locked in the top 8. Qin Wushuang said with a smile. Qin Taichung roared with laughter. Good, without doing anything, we have locked in the top 8. By the way, junior brother Wushuang, at this 8th island, are we still going to do nothing? Qin Wushuang shook his head. No, not for now. We will talk about it when the time is right. Time is right. Qin Taichung blinked his eyes and was somewhat confused. Senior brother, perhaps they have cast a tracking talisman on you and me. Therefore, now we don't need to do anything and just wait for them to come to our door. Tracking talisman? Qin Taichung revealed a shocked face. Then let's hurry and refine it. I heard that this tracking talisman is incredibly difficult to craft. Someone actually used it? Those guys are as difficult to deal with as Xi and Wuji. It's not strange to have a tracking talisman. However, we don't need to refine it. If we do, we will beat the grass to scare the snake. We must pretend that we know nothing and lure them to take the bait. Qin Wushuang's smile was full of confidence and full of infectious power. Qin Taichung nodded and said straightforwardly, All right, then I will listen to you. Senior brother Taichung, that Ling Tianji has already started a hunt. If I've guessed correctly, certainly a few people will be kicked out by him at this 8th island. Now, he is not going to touch a few opponents of equal strength. Instead, he is in charge of cleaning up opponents that are slightly weaker than him. Qin Taichung laughed. That's not a rush, I calculated. Among the last 10 people, there are 5 people like Ling Tianji who are at the 1st level, including you. There are also 5 people with my strength. When Ling Tianji makes his move, he should be making a move against the 5 people on my level. However, he certainly knows about our alliance. Therefore, even if he is to make a move, I will be the last one on the list. Qin Wushuang laughed. Senior brother, don't worry. It's because Ling Tianji is smart that he is not coming. If he comes to you first, he can only blame himself for not having eyes. When we join hands, we will make him come in high spirits and return in disappointment. In these days, Qin Taichung had gone through the levels with Qin Wushuang. He had gained a much deeper understanding of Qin Wushuang. The more he felt that indeed, this new junior brother of his was full of surprises. He gave people a form of unfathomable feeling, like the sea that could not be measured with a pint pot. Qin Wushuang looked around and laughed. Senior brother, this is a good place. Since we have nothing to do, why don't you and I go into solitary training? Training. Although Qin Taichung was considered to be a rather careless person, it would not be easy for him to calm down and cultivate in such a situation where there was danger at all times. Yes, senior brother, I have a premonition that the 9th island will be our main battlefield. Perhaps the true champion will only be determined at the 10th island. 30 days of time could not be said to be long, but it was not short either. On the 6th day, the 3rd person to be disqualified appeared. It was a candidate from the endless Eastern Sea. Similarly, he was kicked out by Ling Tianji. This person had seized the 8th place. On the 13th day, the 4th person to be disqualified appeared. He was also kicked out by Ling Tianji. This person was Yun Zhongye from the Xian Yuan Moundian clan. This way, Yun Zhongye's final ranking was the 7th. This way, among the Heavenly Emperor 8 gates of the Xian Yuan Mound, only 2 people from the Qin clan were left. Of course, this was already an incredible result. It was because up to this point, only 6 people were left. Even if the next one were to be disqualified, he would still be at the level of the top 6. Currently, outside the Illusion Heavenly Lake, martial artists from all over the world were paying more attention to the changing rankings. Following Yun Zhongye's disqualification, the Yun clan had achieved remarkable results. At least, ranking 7th had surpassed their initial expectations. This result was already outstanding and more dazzling than the Heavenly Emperor Xian clan. However, before the pearls of the Qin clan, Yun Zhongye's result did not appear to be worthy of boasting. The Qin clan is truly strong. Among the top 6, there are 2 spots. Disciples of the Heavenly Emperor 8 gates mostly gathered together. Now, They were also engaged in spirited discussions. Besides the Xian clan, the heavenly punishing Villa, and the Sound of Thunder sect that held prejudice against the Qin clan, the other sects did not hold much malice towards the Qin clan. When they saw the Qin clan performing well, of course they felt proud, as they were also part of the Heavenly Emperor Eight Gates. When the competition had developed to this critical point, they were not only competing for rewards, but also for a sense of honor. Among the 5 forbidden spiritual zones, more or less, they would have some competitive spirit. They all felt that the forbidden spiritual zone they were in was the strongest powerhouse in the Tianxian land. Therefore, such ordeal competition was the best way for them to compete with each other. Because of this, besides the sworn enemies of the Qin clan, even disciples of the Yun clan were not stingy with their splendid applause for the Qin clan. This time, the Qin clan is in the limelight. I wonder if they can win the championship in the end? That's not impossible. With 2 disciples forming an alliance, to other opponents, they will have the advantage of numbers. I think it will be difficult. At the end of the ordeal, the remaining are all elite warriors. Although Qin Taichung is powerful, compared to those top ones, there is still a gap. What do you know? The Qin clan is strong not only because of Qin Taichung. The newly emerged Qin Wushuang is the strongest warrior of the Qin clan. These people were not idiots, yet they would not speak about how Qin Wushuang had killed Xian Wuji directly. After all, the disciples of the Xian clan were also present. Each of the disciples of the Xian clan pulled a long face, and their expression was as ugly as it could get. At this moment, suddenly someone shouted loudly, "Look, another person has been disqualified." For the Xian clan, they immediately looked towards the direction of the transportation platform. Inwardly, they kept praying, "It must be the Qin clan, it must be the Qin clan." Without a doubt, the heavenly punishing Villa and the Sound of Thunder sect had the same thought. The better the result of the Qin clan, the more they would lose their face. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.qijian.com. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 693. This time, the one that got disqualified was an elite warrior from the Heavenly Fire southern border. He was also on the same level as Qin Taichung. Naturally, this person had become the 6th. When they saw that the one that got disqualified was not from the Qin clan, each of the Xian clans' faces turned red. Xian Tianqian felt as if his heart was dripping blood as he thought viciously. For such a monstrous figure to suddenly emerge from the Qin clan, it's not good to let him develop at such speed. Now only 5 people are left. Regardless, the Qin clan can at least get a spot in the top 4. Once they get a spot in the top 4, they will receive a supreme Dao fruit. If Qin Wushuang had taken the supreme Dao fruit from the Amei Daoist sect earlier, the Qin clan would have gained 3 or 4 more supreme Dao fruits. The consequences would be unimaginable. Inwardly, Xian Tianqian was mad with anger. Usually, it was rare to encounter 1 supreme Dao fruit in a few hundred years. At least for the past 1,000 years, the Heavenly Emperor Eight Gates had never encountered such fortune divine fruit. However, during this trip to the Illusion Heavenly Lake, 1 supreme Dao fruit after another appeared. It had greatly tested Xian Tianqian's nerves. What made him the most depressed was that after the appearance of the supreme Dao fruit, each time it was the Xian clan that was badly battered. Xian Wuji even paid with his life. However, the Qin clan had benefited continuously. This caused Xian Tianqian to feel deeply dissatisfied. A form of crisis kept assaulting him and caused Xian Tianqian's mood to change continuously. Supreme Dao fruit. He must seize the supreme Dao fruit. Xian Tianqian understood that he must never let the people of the Qin clan consume this supreme Dao fruit. Or else, once these supreme Dao fruit produced effects, the situation of the Heavenly Emperor Eight Gates would be overturned. Sit and watch the Qin clan become stronger. This was something the Heavenly Emperor Xian clan would never wish to see. especially for the Heavenly Emperor election that happened once every 500 years. Regardless, he must not let the Qin clan have the chance to disrupt the situation. Thinking here, Exan Tianchun left the illusion Heavenly Lake and arrived at a remote place. He activated the communication jade plate and contacted the Heavenly Emperor. Tianchun, how is the situation over there? Is the ordeal competition still not over? Heavenly Emperor Exan Tianwen asked with an indifferent tone. Your Majesty, I think it's about to end. However, the situation is extremely unfavorable to us. Exan Tianchun was almost gnashing his teeth. That Qin clan, those two people from the Qin clan have both made it into the top 5. The top 4 would be rewarded with a supreme Dao fruit. If 2 of them made it into the top 5, even if their results were the worst, one of them would be in 4th place. There would definitely be a supreme Dao fruit. Your Majesty, how are the preparations at the Heavenly Emperor Mountain? When Exan Tianwen heard this news, all of a sudden, his heart was also violently shaken. However, in the end, he was someone who had been in a high position for a long time. Exan Tianwen did not lose his self-control. After being stunned for a moment, he said, Tianchun, over there, try not to make any movements. Let nature take its course. He had his own plans. Humph, supreme Dao fruit. The more they obtain, the happier I will be. Your Majesty, you mean? Inwardly, Exan Tianchun was overjoyed. This way, the Heavenly Emperor had already arranged everything. Tianchun, don't beat the grass to scare the snake, Exan Tianwen said lightly. Don't let the Qin clan see any flaws, understand? Yes, Your Majesty. Exan Tianchun immediately answered. Then he asked, Your Majesty, is there still no news from Wuji? A few months had passed. If there was still no news, perhaps Exan Wuji was truly dead. Suddenly, Exan Tianwen's tone became heavier as he said, with an indifferent tone, Tianchun, don't ask about Wuji. Don't tell anyone. I will only tell you that he is not dead. However, you must not tell anyone about this news, understand? Wuji is not dead. Exan Tianchun was overjoyed. Your Majesty, the coagulate, soul genuine book you bestowed to him must have worked. Ha, great. Your Majesty, great. Exan Tianwen gave a slight sneer. It's still somewhat troublesome. Anyways, you will know about this matter when you return. Initially, after Exan Wuji had seized Ruo, Ping Fairy's body, he had returned to the Heavenly Emperor Mountain with a low profile. When Exan Tianwen saw his beloved son appear in such a manner, all sorts of feelings welled up in his heart. When he left the Heavenly Emperor Mountain, he was still a 7-foot-tall man. When he returned, he had turned into a graceful young girl. However, in the end, his son was not dead. While Exan Tianwen was furious, he also felt gratified. He could think of a way to deal with the matter of the house. Therefore, he comforted Exan Wuji. Wuji, don't be upset. Now, you should train well and make a dash for the Supreme Dao stage. When your divine soul is completed, I will shape an ideal male body for you. For this body, you can just destroy it. Exan Wuji said with a tone filled with resentment, Great Father, that Qin Wushuang has harmed me. As long as the Qin clan is not destroyed, there will always be a knot in my heart. It's extremely difficult to make a dash for the Supreme Dao stage. To make a dash for the Supreme Dao stage, he must solve all the heart devils. For example, honored warrior Ji Huai of the Qin clan. A heart devil had troubled him for a few hundred years. In the end, he could not break into the Supreme Dao stage. Exan Tianwen was an expert, of course he knew. He nodded lightly and said, Wuji, don't worry, I will not let you wait too long for this day. Great. Father, I must capture that Qin Wushuang alive and let him experience the taste of becoming a woman. Exan Wuji's mind was completely twisted. On the transportation formation of the 8th island of the illusion Heavenly Lake, the 5 victors had already stepped into the formation, including Ling Tianji. The other 3 looked at Qin Wushuang and Qin Taichong with some astonishment. Only 5 people were left. How come Zhu Yinyin was not there? Clearly, those three felt strange. If there were only 5 people left in the end, Zhu Yunyan should have been there. Why was there no Zhu Yunyan? Yet there were 2 people from the Qin clan. Could it be that an elite warrior like Zhu Yunyan was also disqualified? Who had disqualified Zhu Yunyan? Those 3 looked at each other and saw the confusion in each other's eyes. As they thought about it, inwardly they trembled. Could it be that Zhu Yunyan was disqualified by the 2 brothers of the Qin clan? They were aware of Zhu Yunyan's strength. He was definitely at the same level as them, for he was at the peak of the common mysterious stage. Additionally, that Zhu Yunyan excelled in transformation and his strength was not weak. He was definitely the most popular figure to win the championship. If Zhu Yunyan was disqualified by the 2 heroes Qin Wushuang without a sound, then, instantly, the gaze of these 3 had become complicated. They shot a sidelong glance at Qin Wushuang and Qin Taichung. Inwardly, an unprecedented mutual understanding emerged. They must not let these 2 heroes of the Qin clan continue to work together. Regardless, they must break them up and disqualify one of them. Or else, when these 2 work together, compared to them fighting alone, they would always have an advantage. When these 3 looked at each other, they had reached an unprecedented mutual understanding. Although Qin Wushuang appeared to be calm on the surface, inwardly, he was experiencing a perilous situation. Certainly, these 3 had reached a mutual understanding. Just as Qin Wushuang had expected, the 9th island would be their main battlefield. Everything was within his calculations. Only, the random teleportation of this transportation formation had more or less left a gap for the 2 of them to work together. Therefore, at this point, Qin Wushuang would not dare to guarantee that he would be able to regroup with senior brother Qin Taichung before those 3 people. Senior brother Taichung's strength would not be a problem. However, the remaining 3 opponents were all existences at the same level as Xian Wuji. Ling Tianji from the Heavenly Mountain sect of the extreme North Snow Zone, Jiang Kuei from the One-Horned Dragon clan of the Eastern Sea, and Lu Qingchuan from the Flying Rainbow Taoist sect of the Illusion Heavenly Lake. These 3 were the absolute proud sons of heaven of their respective sections. They were also the strongest elite warriors of the young generation beneath the totem clans of their respective forbidden spiritual zones. They shared the same status as Xian Wuji and Zhu Yunyan, who was disqualified by Qin Wushuang. They were known as the Tianxian 5 Heroes. Of course, the title of the Tianxian 5 Heroes was added by the common people. Since the totem clans did not step out, of course they were the ones to dominate. Compared to the exceptional disciples of the totem clans, the Tianxian 5 Heroes could not help but pale in comparison. Among the powerhouses of the totem clans, the strength of the Tianxian 5 Heroes would at most be in the middle. At this moment, these 3 were the greatest enemies of the 2 Qin brothers. Qin Wushuang sent his voice to Qin Taichung, senior brother Taichung. These 3 have reached a mutual understanding. When we arrive at the 9th island, if you are close to me, I will go find you. If we are far away, you must use all methods to make sure you do not get chased. Qin Wushuang weighed the severity of the matter. He knew that if they were far away, before Qin Wushuang could arrive, perhaps other people would set their eyes on senior brother Taichung. Therefore, the Battle of the 9th Island had a delicate situation. From Qin Wushuang's perspective, the crucial point was for these 2 to enter the top 4. Once they entered the top 4, even if senior brother Taichung was disqualified, he would get a supreme Dao fruit as a reward. As for the 2nd or 4th place, they would all get supreme Dao fruit. The only difference would be the supreme Dao armor and supreme Dao weapon. Although the Qin clan did not have much of these 2 rewards, a disciple at the level of Qin Taichung would not lack them. Therefore, Qin Wushuang's goal was to help senior brother Taichung enter the top 4. As long as he entered the top 4, even if Qin Wushuang could not win the championship in the end, he could ensure that the Qin clan would get 2 supreme Dao fruits. Once Qin Wushuang won the championship, he would get 3 supreme Dao fruits. Qin Wushuang knew that the opportunity to change the fate of the Qin clan was right before him. It would depend on whether he could reach out and grab it. If he could bring back 5 supreme Tao fruits from this trip to the illusion heavenly lake, to the declining Qin clan, without a doubt, it would be a tremendous turning point. For your information, perhaps 5 supreme Tao fruits would be a great fortuitous opportunity that was hard to come by in a few thousand years. Even for the powerful totem elite warriors, each family could only afford 1 supreme Tao fruit. It was apparent how precious this object was. I must help senior brother Taichung enter the top 4. 2 supreme Tao fruits, this is my bottom line. Qin Wushuang secretly made up his mind. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. When the transportation circle was activated, 5 figures threw themselves into the 9th island. As they kept going deeper into the ordeal islands, each island would be much more vast than the previous one. The terrain would also be much more complicated. The surface area of this 9th island was 5 times larger than the first island. The instant each person was being transported, a voice sounded beside their ears at the same time. Young people, the environment of this island will form enough of a threat to you. There will be many spiritual beasts at the same level as you. Of course, if you can pass it smoothly and enter the 4th level island, most likely you will face the test of the supreme Tao spiritual beasts. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.chidian.com. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 694. Whoosh. With a flash of meteoric light, he dropped onto the island. Qin Wushuang's figure paused, and he stood firmly. He observed the situation around him briefly. He had also heard that voice a moment ago. On this 9th island, there were many spiritual beasts at the peak of the common mysterious stage. Therefore, on this island, besides the threat from the opponent, he must also be on guard against the threat from the inside of the island. However, Qin Wushuang had no other choice now. At this point, he could only fight with all his strength and strive for the best result. He took out the observant finger jade plate and immediately locked onto the position of the other 4. Qin Wushuang's complexion was as bitter as a bitter gourd as he gave a long sigh inwardly. Indeed, the heavens are not going according to my wishes. Senior brother Taichung is so far away from me. Fortunately, it seems that everyone is far away from each other. Those 3 guys will certainly think of a way to make a move against senior brother Taichung. This point could be seen from the eyes of those 3 guys on the transportation platform. Qin Wushuang was extremely sensitive to the grasp of the situation. He knew that under such circumstances, meeting up with senior brother Taichung might not be the most ideal choice. It was because most likely those 3 would form an alliance with mutual understanding and attack the Qin brothers from all sides. Although the rules did not allow an alliance. However, such mutual understanding could exploit the loopholes of the rules. It seems that I must adjust my strategy. There is only one way to seize the top 4. Let senior brother Taichung be eliminated 1 step later. As long as any one of those 3 is 1 step later than senior brother Taichung, I can lock onto the top 4. When Qin Wushuang thought here, he observed the observant finger jade plate again. Suddenly, the corner of his mouth twitched. Lu Qinchuan of the Flying Rainbow Taoist sect? It's you. According to the jade plate, the position of this Lu Qinchuan was the closest to Qin Wushuang. She was no more than 3,000 miles away. For senior brother Taichung and the other 2, they were at least 10,000 miles away. Therefore, Qin Wushuang decided to take the risk and bet on this Lu Qinchuan. Flying Rainbow Dojo. Qin Wushuang didn't have a good impression of this name. One had to know that on the first day they entered the illusion heavenly lake, they encountered a Lu Yixiao who claimed to be from the Flying Rainbow Dao Right, who tricked them into the immortal leaf flying boat, causing them to suffer greatly. Until now, Qin Wushuang still didn't know what was going on. Since Lu Qinchuan was the closest to him, then he would use Lu Qinchuan as a weapon. Thinking of this, Qin Wushuang circulated all the spiritual energy in his body and cleansed his body. Since he was going to take the initiative, regardless of whether the other party had placed a tracking talisman on him this time, he had to refine it. Otherwise, the other party would have easily detected his approach. Qin Wushuang was a very perceptive person. Naturally, he would not make such a low-level mistake. Lu Qingchuan was a female. She was also the only female within the top 5. However, this Lu Qingchuan had always liked to dress up as a man. At this very moment, she was like an elegant young master as she slowly opened her eyes under a large tree. Whoosh! Lu Qingchuan spat out a mouthful of turbid air. Her thin, willowy eyebrows twisted into a trace of annoyance. Inwardly, she thought, that Qin clan is not the leading powerhouse of Xianyuan Mound. How could they be so monstrous? Among the top 5, there are 2 spots? That Qin Taichung has mediocre strength. How could he enter the top 5? He must have run into some dog's hit luck. And that Qin Wushuang, judging by his strength, he has not even entered the exquisite, mysterious boundary stage. I don't know what kind of crooked path he has taken, yet he is worthy to be ranked with me in the top 5. Lu Qingchuan was the type of woman who was absolutely superstitious about strength. Having received the traditional education from the illusion Heavenly Lake, Lu Qingchuan also spoke bluntly to men. Although the degree of her abnormal mentality was not as high as that female celestial Miao Yun of the Amei Taoist sect, she also thought highly of herself. Ling Tianji and Jiang Kuei should have the same idea as me. I cannot let the Qin clan keep laughing. It's time to make a move. Lu Qingchuan raised the corner of her mouth and revealed a trace of pride. Like a beautiful peacock, she was incredibly narcissistic. HM. Suddenly, Lu Qingchuan was moved inwardly. Someone's here? With a thought, her hand was already holding onto the sword hilt. Pulling the pair of short swords that were like autumn water, they emitted dazzling lights with a cold and terrifying aura. Miss Lu, don't be nervous. A figure pierced through the sky. It was Ling Tianji. Nervous? Lu Qingchuan raised the corner of her mouth. Ling Tianji, do you think you are qualified to make me nervous? Ling Tianji laughed. That's right. Miss Lu is more powerful than me. However, it seems that the competition between us should not appear on this 9th island, right? Lu Qingchuan's brows trembled. What do you mean? You are not here to persuade me to form an alliance, right? Haha, of course not. Different sects are not allowed to form an alliance. Ling Tianji said with a smile. Of course, I know about this. However, this time, my first target is not Miss Lu, nor Jiang Kuei. As for the specific target, Miss Lu should know. Lu Qingchuan was well aware of it, yet she said, I don't know. Ling Tianji laughed. Have you locked on a Miss Lu's target? Lu Qingchuan said, do you want to ask if my target is you or not? Ling Tianji said proudly, if Miss Lu is calm enough, it shouldn't be me. All right, let's not talk too much. If we talk too much, it will seem like we are forming an alliance. Let's each do our own thing. How about it? Lu Qingchuan snorted lightly. Whatever. At this moment, Lu Qingchuan's expression suddenly changed. At the same time, Ling Tianji's expression also turned slightly cold. What's the situation? Roar! With a loud sound, a huge black-backed serpent scuttled out aggressively from the dense forest. It rolled its terrifying body, and its fishy tongue was like a huge rope. It was extremely terrifying. This is a spiritual beast at the peak of the common mysterious stage. Ling Tianji shouted. Lu Qingchuan obviously realized it too, and reprimanded tenderly. Good. I was just worried about not having a chance to practice. Ling Tianji, you can get lost now. At this moment, a mysterious light suddenly shone from the underbrush in the west. A ferocious, giant beast seemed to have drilled out of thin air. It had a mane like steel thorns, which appeared abnormally ferocious. The scales on its body were extremely domineering. With a loud roar, the entire void seemed to be trembling. Another one, Ling Tianji shouted in a low voice. Whoosh, whoosh. 2 spiritual beasts scuttled out consecutively from the south and north. One was a huge golden bull, and the other was a huge tiger with red spots all over its body. 4 of them, 4 spiritual beasts. Although Lu Qingchuan was conceited, She couldn't help but gasp at this moment. Ling Tianji said leisurely, "Miss Lu, then I'll accept deferentially and get lost first. You should be able to deal with them, right?" Lu Qingchuan's scalp went numb. If it was one or two, she had the confidence to deal with them. However, with 4 spiritual beasts at the exquisite, mysterious stage appearing all of a sudden, how could Lu Qingchuan still have that confidence? Her expression turned slightly cold, and she glared at Ling Tianji. "You want to escape, but do you think you can escape? No matter which direction you escape from, they will definitely attack you first." Ling Tianji smiled bitterly and said, "Then what should I do?" Lu Qingchuan sneered and said, "Do whatever you want." Ling Tianji sighed and said, "Looks like I can only fight side by side with Miss Lu. Sai, my luck is really bad. Why did 4 such abnormal spiritual beasts suddenly pop out?" Lu Qingchuan said coldly, "Cut the crap. 2 for each of us. You can pick." Roar! That golden bull was the first to attack. It tilted its head, and its 2 horns that were like golden light suddenly moved. Like 2 sharp blades, it pushed its 4 hooves, and its entire body was like red lightning as it charged straight over. The huge bull horns formed 2 streams of air and pierced straight over. At the same time, the big snake with a black back also followed and twisted its body. With a swing of its tail, a whistling whip heavily smashed towards Lu Qingchuan's head with an imposing manner that could tear apart the void. Boom! An imposing manner that was like Mount Tai pressing down. Lu Qingchuan's body was as light as a swallow as she gracefully moved her body. With both swords in her hands, she shouted against the wind and crossed her swords. Drawing a cross-shaped light, she slashed towards the direction of the big snake with a black back. What Lu Qingchuan didn't expect was that the moment she moved, the other 2 spiritual beasts actually rushed towards her with the same target, especially the spiritual beast with a mane that was like steel needles. It opened its big mouth, and with a flash of mysterious light, a powerful force formed a huge whirlpool. The abnormal suction force that it produced instantly formed a large mass of air, causing Lu Qingchuan's body to suddenly feel a sense of stagnation. Not good. Lu Qingchuan's heart suddenly became anxious. She didn't expect that Ling Tianji would actually sit and watch. Moreover, this stupid spiritual beast actually targeted and attacked her alone. "Ling Tianji," Lu Qingchuan shouted in anger. "Miss Lu, be careful," Ling Tianji shouted in a low voice. "I'm coming." Lu Qingchuan heard and hurriedly said, "Help me deal with that monster with a mane on its head. Quick." "Alrighty." Like a giant flying bird, Ling Tianji's figure flew over from his side. The instant he brushed past Lu Qingchuan's shoulder, both of his hands moved continuously. As if his 10 fingers were flying, waves of sword qi spurted out from between his fingers. For a time, like the falling stars from the sky, the sword qi flew horizontally and vertically towards Lu Qingchuan. Lu Qingchuan never expected that Ling Tianji would make a move against her. "Ha ha ha! Miss Lu, sorry for the offense." With this laugh, his voice immediately changed. When Ling Tianji's figure dropped to the ground, with a change of face, he immediately restored the appearance of Qin Wushuang. "It's you." Lu Qingchuan dropped from the sky in despair. Qin Wushuang had already locked all the vital acupoints in her entire body. Her sea of qi and dantian had been sealed by the sword qi. Even someone as powerful as her who was at the peak of the common mysterious stage could not do anything. For those 4 spiritual beasts, with a flash, they also transformed into meteoric lights and entered Qin Wushuang's sealed scroll. Qin Wushuang said with a smile, "It's me, Miss Lu. Didn't you, Ling Tianji and Jiang Kuei, come to a mutual understanding to deal with the 2 Qin brothers? I'm only striking first to gain the upper hand." Lu Qingchuan's complexion became thoroughly red. "You are despicable, shameless," Qin Wushuang said with a leisurely smile. "Miss Lu, you are too naive. There's the so-called saying that all is fair in war. However, on the other hand, even if I was the real Ling Tianji, Under that situation, I would have attacked you. Eliminating someone. Isn't it eliminating an opponent? Lu Qingchuan was speechless. She never expected that she would be eliminated this quickly. She had just entered the 9th island. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 695. Miss Lu, your Dantian is sealed. If you are confident that you can survive on this island, I will not stop you. Ha ha. Qin Wushuang laughed and no longer made a move. He lifted his feet and walked away like a gentleman. Lu Qingchuan gnashed her teeth in anger. Qin Wushuang, you are despicable. You are shameless. However, when she spoke these words, even she felt she was not in the right. Despicable and shameless. A moment ago, she was still thinking about how to deal with the two Qin brothers. She would eventually have to pay for what she did. Although she swore, she did not dare to be careless. She took out the transportation jade plate, clenched her teeth, and activated it with extreme unwillingness. Although her Dantian was sealed, she still had the remaining power to activate this transportation jade plate. Amidst her anger and unwillingness, a burst of divine light brought her out. Qin Wushuang was not too far away. When he saw Lu Qingchuan being transported out, he gave a light sigh. Despicable. Perhaps in a world of martial artists, besides hot-blooded battles, they always need some wisdom and methods. If this is called despicable, then so be it. For the family, for the people I love to live better, I must get the supreme Tao fruit. Thinking here, Qin Wushuang held the observant finger jade plate in his hand. Yet, he realized that Ling Tianji and Jiang Kuei were already rushing towards Qin Taichung at full speed. Up to this point, Qin Wushuang was rather calm. Since Lu Qingchuan was out, it meant the top 4 spots were set. He had made the right bet. Even if he and senior brother Taichung were to be disqualified immediately, they would be the 3rd and 4th place. They could still take the 2 supreme Tao fruits. However, Qin Wushuang's goal was not just this. Next, he would fight for the championship, for 1 more supreme Tao fruit. In the end, Qin Taichung was defeated. He was defeated under the attack of Ling Tianji. However, to Qin Taichung's surprise, when he was defeated, there was already someone who was disqualified before him. In other words, Qin Taichung was the 4th place. When he was transported out, Qin Taichung did not know that Lu Qingchuan was already disqualified. Feeling extremely regretful, he walked out dejectedly. However, he saw his colleagues from the Qin clan welcoming him with a face full of smiles. Congratulations, eldest senior brother. Haha, what's there to be happy about? He was only 1 step away from the supreme Tao fruit reward. Alas, but I admit defeat. That Ling Tianji is too strong. Haha. Qin Taichung was rather open-minded. What do you mean by 1 step? Qin Hao cried out, Eldest senior brother, you're in 4th place, so you'll get a supreme Tao fruit. I am 4th. Qin Taichung was a little confused. He was defeated by Ling Tianji on the first day he entered the 9th island. Naturally, Qin Taichung felt that he would be the first to be eliminated. That's right. Eldest senior brother, don't you know? Qin Hongyan also laughed. An hour before you, Flying Rainbow Dojo's Lu Qingchuan was eliminated. As soon as this Lu Qingchuan came out, she swore at junior brother Wushuang. It seems that she was eliminated by junior brother Wushuang. In that case, I have unknowingly made it to the 4th place. Qin Taichung felt that his luck was too good. He was already extremely lucky to make it to the top 5. It was too unexpected for him to make it to the top 4. Qin Yunran walked over with a smile. Taichung, you are very lucky this time. However, it's all thanks to Wushuang. It seems that Wushuang is indeed the deputy general of the Qin clan. Haha, top 3. Now let's see how they compete for the top 3. Inside the 9th island, Qin Wushuang observed the observant finger jade plate. He knew that senior brother Taichung was already eliminated, yet he could do nothing. Ling Tianji was close to senior brother Taichung. Unless he could teleport, he would not be able to make it. However, senior brother Qin Taichung had already exceeded the quota by making it to the top 4. Although Qin Wushuang felt somewhat regretful, he did not feel sad. Since this Ling Tianji defeated senior brother Qin Taichung, let me, Qin Wushuang defeat Ling Tianji. Qin Wushuang was filled with even more expectation for this championship. Top 3, the final competition for the top 3. Indeed, the terrain of the 9th island was much more complicated. Many ferocious beasts roamed about. Fortunately, Qin Wushuang also had spiritual beasts at the peak of the common mysterious stage. Plus the purple cloud Yin-Yang wings, it allowed him to deal with many situations with ease. Clearly, that Ling Tianji and Jiang Kuei were also abnormally careful. Now, Qin Taichung was already eliminated. What remained was the competition between the top elite warriors. The mutual understanding between each other had already collapsed. Now, they were only focused on competing for the championship and defeating the other opponents. One must say that Ling Tianji and Jiang Kuei were incredibly astute. Initially, they thought there were only 4 people left in the competition. However, after a few days, vividly, they sensed that it seemed Lu Qingchuan had already been eliminated. This caused them to be even more vigilant against Qin Wushuang. In the beginning, they felt that Qin Wushuang was powerful and not simple. However, as the battle progressed to this point, they realized how terrifying Qin Wushuang was. That Zhu Yinyin and Lu Qingchuan were both on par with them in terms of strength. Since these two were eliminated by Qin Wushuang, their strength could be imagined. Therefore, Ling Tianji and Jiang Kuei were abnormally careful. In this way, Qin Wushuang could not get a chance to approach them through the observant finger jade plate several times. These two people's defensive lines were set up very well. For a moment, it was not easy to break through. These two people were very pragmatic to be able to fight their way into the top 3. They attacked when it was time to attack, and defended when it was time to defend. They would never be greedy and advance prematurely. Although they were very unwilling, they had to admit that in front of the powerful Qin Wushuang, they had to take a defensive stance in order to have a chance to stand out. They had no chance of winning against Qin Wushuang. Zhu Yinyin and Lu Qingchuan had already sufficiently explained this point. This kind of pragmatic tactic made Qin Wushuang feel somewhat worried. If this continued for a long time, Jiang Kuei and Ling Tianji might form a tacit understanding. Even with the help of the spiritual beasts, certainly Qin Wushuang would not be able to deal with 2 warriors at the peak of the common mysterious stage at the same time. In fact, when dealing with one person, Qin Wushuang had fully utilized tactics. Perhaps Qin Wushuang could win if he were to fight head-on, but he might not be able to take down the other party. If the other party insisted on not fighting and chose to retreat, he would be helpless. When he fought with Xian Wuji, it was because Xian Wuji had underestimated him and caught him off guard. He had eliminated Zhu Yunyan because he thought he was smart and pretended to be Qin Wushuang to trick him. On the contrary, Qin Wushuang beat him at his own game and defeated him in one move. To deal with Lu Qingchuan, he had used tactics to confuse her. Each battle had its own characteristics and did not rely on absolute strength to win. Every success was due to factors that could not be replicated. Jiang Kuei and Ling Tianji were both at the peak of the common mysterious stage. Once they were determined to take a defensive stance, their powerful strength was apparent. Each time Qin Wushuang approached their defensive circle, he would trigger their defensive formation and startle the other party. For a few times, Qin Wushuang had given up halfway. After trying it twice, Qin Wushuang also learned his lesson. He thought to himself, "Now these two seem to be on guard against me and are not coming out. It's not easy to deal with them. I can use the observant finger jade plate to lock onto their position and summon the sealed spiritual beasts to attack them together." However, it's not easy to approach their defensive circle. Initially, when I approached Lu Qingchuan, it was because she was not on guard and was too confident. Now, the situation is completely different. Qin Wushuang was also incredibly distressed. He knew that he had almost used all of his trump cards. when facing elite warriors at the peak of the common mysterious stage who were determined to defend. Indeed, he did not have many ways. Perhaps these two guys are planning to wear me out and try their luck at the 10th island? In fact, Qin Wushuang did not want to enter the 10th island, because when he entered the 9th island earlier, there was a voice that reminded him. The 10th island was the most difficult among the 4 levels, and also the most dangerous, because there were divine beasts roaming around there. Divine beasts, no matter what level of divine beast they were, could not possibly be fought against by elite warriors below the supreme Dao stage. Therefore, Qin Wushuang was eager to settle the battle on the 9th island. If Jiang Kuei and Ling Tianji were not aware and played a hunting game with Qin Wushuang was very confident that he could fish in troubled waters and settle these 2 people on the 9th island. However, the other party was very cunning. Lu Qingchuan and Zhu Yunyin's experience made those 2 people's tactical choices very practical. They did not play confrontation with Qin Wushuang at all. Just like that, time passed by without a sound. Qin Wushuang had already tried 4 times. No matter if it was Jiang Kuei or Ling Tianji, they were both unusually sensitive. They did not allow Qin Wushuang to approach and escaped without a trace. It was not that Qin Wushuang did not think of using the encirclement tactic. However, no matter if it was the swallowing sky lion dragon or the dark mysterious snake, they were both at the peak of the common mysterious stage. Under the situation where they did not have divine weapons, they did not have full confidence to guard a gap and not let them break through. Therefore, Qin Wushuang's first 4 attempts all ended in failure. Calculating the time, it was already the 27th day on the 9th island. After another 3 days, the time limit would be reached. Once the time limit was reached, they would be transported to the 4th level island and enter the 10th island to face the legendary divine beast. In the territory occupied by the divine beast, Qin Wushuang's many advantages would completely become fleeting clouds. In front of the divine beast, strength was completely useless. It was a competition to see who had better luck, who could persist longer, and who could guarantee that they would not be discovered by the divine beast. Qin Wushuang decided to try again. In the last 3 to 4 days, no matter what, he could not leave any regrets. This time, he decided to make a move on Ling Tianji. If it was possible, he would use the graceful spiritual bow. Currently, he had used up all the supreme Dao 5 elemental talismans just by using the graceful spiritual bow. In fact, Qin Wushuang did not have absolute assurance to shoot Ling Tianji. Honestly, Qin Wushuang did not want to use the graceful spiritual bow. It was because once an elite warrior at the peak of the common mysterious stage had a supreme Dao weapon, it would be enough to destroy the green jade arrows. For this point, Qin Wushuang had fully experienced it during his battle with Xian Wuji. Now, with only 2 green jade arrows left, of course Qin Wushuang was unwilling to take the risk. However, up to this point, he was unwilling to waste any more time. Going to the 10th island to face the divine beast was definitely not something that Qin Wushuang was willing to face. The decisive battle must be completed on this 9th island. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.chidian.com. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 696. The focus of the competition for the top 3 was actually the championship. Although there was a difference in the rewards for the 2nd and 3rd place, there was not much difference. Both of them had a Supreme Dao fruit. The only difference was the Supreme Dao armor and Supreme Dao weapon. The championship was the dream of all the 74 contestants who signed up for this trial competition. Now, 71 of them had been eliminated. Only 3 people were left. Deep in their hearts, these 3 people were determined to win. If they couldn't win the championship, the difference between the 2nd and 3rd place was meaningless. Master, Dark Mysterious Snake, is in position. Purple-Eyed Golden Bull, Burning Sky Explosive Tiger are in position. sky-swallowing lion dragon in position. Swoosh! Qin Wushuang's body was like a lightning that flashed across the sky, penetrating the distance of the void. In this battle, no matter if he won or lost, Qin Wushuang would go all out. In a remote corner of the Nine Islands, Ling Tianji suddenly opened his eyes. With a tug of his hand, a small white flag appeared in his hand. With the small flag in his hand, he waved it left and right a few times. The aura of spiritual power around Ling Tianji suddenly became dense, and blue water ripples appeared in the void. These water ripples rippled gently. At first glance, it looked like he was in a water body. But in fact, these water ripples were only in a vaporized state, simulating a liquefied state. And these ripples were Ling Tianji's defense formation. With the formation flag in his hand, Ling Tianji could see all the abnormal movements within the defense range through the fluctuation of these water ripples. Suddenly, Ling Tianji's eyebrows moved. He waved the small flag in his hand again, and a cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Again, this kid really doesn't want to give up? Looks like he can't hold it in anymore. Humph, it's already the last 3 days. Let's go to the 10th island to decide the winner. Ling Tianji waved the flag, and a sparkling and translucent light ball soaked down. Suddenly, Ling Tianji's body was swallowed by it. Soon after, Ling Tianji's figure disappeared into the clouds. Whoosh, whoosh. 3 or 4 figures continuously shot over. Oh no, Master, that guy ran away again. Damn it, ran away again. When the 4 exquisite, mysterious realm spirit beasts approached, they discovered that Ling Tianji's figure was already nowhere to be seen in the circle they had surrounded. Qin Wushuang shot down from the sky and landed on the ground. Feeling the aura left behind by Ling Tianji, he looked very unhappy. Ling Tianji's perception was simply too strong. Qin Wushuang had already done his best, but he didn't expect that this guy would still be 1 step ahead of him. On the observant finger jade plate, Ling Tianji was running at high speed and was already at least 100 miles away from him. Qin Wushuang gritted his teeth. Chase! Although Ling Tianji managed to escape, Qin Wushuang had the observant finger jade plate. It wasn't a problem for him to track Ling Tianji. However, it was hard to say who would win in this kind of chase. Although Qin Wushuang had the purple clouding yang wings and had a slight advantage in terms of absolute speed, the terrain of this island was steep. Clearly, the chase was not purely a competition of speed. One must also consider the terrain and all other dangerous factors. Ling Tianji's body was as light as a swallow. His flying technique was extremely unique. Although it was not as majestic as the purple cloud yin-yang wings, his flying technique had integrated the profound mysteries of space to the smallest detail. He almost could not feel the air resistance in the space. This was the difference between Qin Wushuang and Ling Tianji. Qin Wushuang was at the perfect void martial stage. After all, he had not shattered the void. Clearly, his comprehension of the space laws was not as good as Ling Tianji. His absolute speed was due to the shuttling ability of the purple cloud yin-yang wings. For Ling Tianji, his absolute speed was not as fast as Qin Wushuang. However, his comprehension of the space laws was extremely detailed. It allowed him to reduce the air resistance in the void to the lowest level. This way, the two of them were almost evenly matched. In fact, Ling Tianji was also feeling annoyed inwardly. With his personality, he would never be chased by others. On the contrary, in the past, he was the only one who chased after others. However, the elimination of Zhu Yunyan and Lu Qingchuan had created a tremendous mental pressure for Ling Tianji. If it were during normal times, he would never fear a head-on battle. However, this battle was related to the competition for the supreme Dao fruit. Despite Ling Tianji's unwillingness, he must face this situation. Therefore, he compromised and chose to avoid the battle. If elite warriors at the peak of the common mysterious stage were unwilling to fight, Qin Wushuang realized that it would be truly difficult to catch up to them. After Qin Wushuang urged his extreme speed a few times, he still could not shorten the distance between him and Ling Tianji. Now, Qin Wushuang realized that indeed he must face the difference between them. Just when Qin Wushuang was chasing Ling Tianji endlessly, Jiang Kuei from the one-horned dragon clan of the Eastern Sea was enjoying the peace and happiness brought to him by the water of the illusion heavenly lake to his heart's content. Jiang Kuei's pair of green eyebrows rose leisurely. There was a mocking smile in the corner of his mouth as he mumbled to himself, "Let these two idiots kill each other. The final result will be mutual destruction. Ha ha ha." It's good to be a member of the Dragon Clan. It's much more comfortable to be in the water than on the island. Initially, Jiang Kuei was not on the island. On the contrary, he found the water next to the island and found an extremely comfortable place. He ignored the chase between Ling Tianji and Qin Wushuang and appeared to be watching the fire burning across the river. Since Jiang Kuei came from the one-horned dragon clan of the Eastern Sea, certainly he had more ways to survive in the water than Qin Wushuang and Ling Tianji. On the land, perhaps Jiang Kuei would not dare to claim to be number one. However, in the water, among all the participants, he would definitely claim to be number one. In the endless Eastern Sea, the one-horned dragon clan was definitely a top-notch existence. This Jiang Kuei was the most exceptional young warrior of the endless Eastern Sea. He was equivalent to Xian Wuji in the Xianyuan Mount. In the endless Eastern Sea, besides the true 9 dragon clans and the non-traditional 9 dragon clans, the totem powerhouse was the Forefather Dragon Clan. The so-called Forefather Dragon was the dragon clan from the immemorial period. The dragon clan with the purest bloodline. 2 days had passed, and there was only 1 day left before the time limit of the 9th island. Qin Wushuang still did not give up chasing Ling Tianji. In fact, Qin Wushuang already knew that it would be extremely difficult to catch up to Ling Tianji. It would be almost impossible. However, Qin Wushuang did not give up. First of all, he wanted to exert enough pressure on Ling Tianji to affect his mind in the next level. In addition, during this chase, Qin Wushuang enjoyed it immensely, especially when he was fighting against Ling Tianji, an elite warrior at the peak of the common mysterious stage. It allowed him to gain a deeper understanding of the space laws. In half a year, after passing through the 9 islands, Qin Wushuang did not give up on comprehending the space laws and the concept of shattering the void. Therefore, up to this point, he already treated chasing after Ling Tianji as an activity to hone himself. Also, with the help of this training, it allowed him to have a clearer future on the path to the exquisite mysterious boundary stage. Qin Wushuang enjoyed this feeling. At the 10,000 Flower Valley, he had refined the sky, pilfered pill, and entered the perfect void martial stage. After more than half a year of tempering, Qin Wushuang thought it would not be that fast to break into the exquisite mysterious boundary stage. However, in this half a year, inside the island of the illusion heavenly lake, the training environment was a few times better than the outside world. This allowed Qin Wushuang's training progress to develop at an astonishing speed. At this moment, Qin Wushuang realized that he was only 1 step away from that exquisite mysterious boundary stage. Inside Qin Wushuang's heart, an ambition had emerged. He desired to achieve a qualitative leap in this chase and dash for the exquisite mysterious boundary stage. If he could dash into the exquisite mysterious boundary stage, even if he did not defeat his opponent on this 9th island, it would be a success. The sun gradually rose from the east. Currently, Qin Wushuang, who was flying above the illusion heavenly lake, saw that at the end of the boundless illusion heavenly lake, there was a layer of dense fog that made it seem like a fairyland. However, the golden sunlight seemed to be able to pierce through the blue dome of heaven and penetrate into this boundless body of water. Qin Wushuang's spiritual perception was also a layer of brilliant light. It was as if a large door had opened to receive a ray of sunlight from this world. Whoosh! Qin Wushuang suddenly descended. What gains and losses? What success and failure? In an instant, Qin Wushuang's heart had all settled down. When this ray of sunlight shot in, It was as if it had directly shot into the depths of Qin Wushuang's heart. A realization suddenly blossomed in his heart like a lotus flower, extremely holy and great. The 3,000 great Taos. In this nature, every blade of grass, every tree, every ray of sunlight, every drop of rain, every flash of lightning, every gust of wind, all of them follow the laws of nature. How the heavenly Tao operates is the creation of the heavenly Tao. Those who obey the heavenly Tao live. Those who defy the heavenly Tao die. Is the so-called heavenly Tao like this? That ray of sunlight seemed to have directly knocked open a large door in the depths of Qin Wushuang's heart, and awakened Qin Wushuang's dormant heart. Seeing one's nature clearly, becoming one with the Tao. The human heart could be hidden, but the heavenly Tao could not be changed. When the human heart was hidden, one would not be able to see one's nature clearly. Naturally, one would not be able to see through the heavenly Tao. Just like the heart demon. With the heart demon, the supreme divine Tao would be unreachable. Since Qin Wushuang's debut, this was the first time that he had such a deep understanding of the word Tao. What is Tao? There is no Tao in Tao. Tao is everywhere, but nowhere to be seen. Tao is in the heart, in every detail in the vast universe. In a trance, Qin Wushuang was already immersed in it. When he opened his eyes, the sun had already set. The afterglow of the setting sun, like the morning sun, made one's heart feel peaceful. Qin Wushuang felt as if his entire person had been baptized, and his body and mind were joyful. He knew that the door to his divine sense had already been opened. Breaking through to the exquisite, mysterious boundary, everything was already prepared. Only the final impact was left. At the same time, the 30 days on the 9th island had passed just like that. On the 9th island, 5 people had entered and 2 had been eliminated. Lu Qinchuan was ranked 5th, Qin Taichung was ranked 4th, and the names had already been decided. And the fight for the top 3 seemed to have entered a white-hot stage. Just as the organizers had predicted, the top 3 rankings would only be decided on the 10th island. To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 697. The fight for the top 3 was extremely heart-wrenching. Everyone was looking forward to the final fierce battle on the 10th island, looking forward to the final ranking. The transportation platform was activated and 3 figures shot into the 10th island. During the transportation process, there was still a clear voice ringing beside their ears. Young people, congratulations on entering the final 4th level of the island. Although this 10th island is the first island of the 4th level, its degree of danger is definitely much higher than the previous islands. In this island, you must be 120% alert and not show off. If you encounter danger that you can't handle, don't be stingy in activating the transportation jade token in your hands. I wish you good luck. Please remember, this stage is not just a test of survival. The champion's reward is 2 supreme Tao fruits. One of them comes from this island. Whoever gets that supreme Tao fruit first will be the champion. You can leave the island in advance. Of course, the supreme Tao fruit is not so easy to get. Beside the divine beast, you must be mentally prepared. Of course, if you can't get the supreme Tao fruit, then according to the previous rules, whoever stays on the island the longest will be the champion. This voice sounded like a warning and also like an exhortation. This was not important anymore. The key was that on this island, what the 3 of them had to face was a divine beast that could tear them to shreds anytime. This organizer had indeed put in a lot of effort. Obviously, they also did not want to see the competitors still using the escape tactic, but encouraged them to take the initiative to attack. Take the initiative to seize the supreme Tao fruit. In this island, the last to leave the island might not necessarily be the champion, because obtaining the supreme Tao fruit was the champion's priority. In this way, the fight for the champion seemed even more interesting. take the initiative to seize the supreme Tao fruit. This was the riskiest, but also the most tempting choice. Or drag it out with the opponent and see who is the last to leave. But for this choice, one must consider the situation of the opponent obtaining the supreme Tao fruit and locking in the champion in advance. The risk was small, but the champion had to look at other people's faces. Or take the initiative to attack, not with the goal of seizing the supreme Tao fruit, but with the goal of forcing the opponent out, locking in the champion with the opponent out. 3 choices, after comprehensive consideration. The third was still the safest. He didn't need to look at other people's faces, nor did he need to take a huge risk by plucking the hair from the tiger's mouth. Qin Wushuang swept away his previous impatience. Ever since he gained enlightenment on the last day of the 9th island, Qin Wushuang had become much more relaxed. Gains and losses were no longer so important. Divine Beast? Qin Wushuang thought in his heart, and the corners of his mouth revealed a pleasant smile. Then, let me experience the charm of a mythological beast. It was not that Qin Wushuang had never dealt with divine beasts before. In the 10,000 Flower Valley, Qin Wushuang had also tasted divine beasts at the 8 Tribulation Transformation, Supreme Tao Realm. After staying in the 10,000 Flower Valley for so long, he had not been killed by divine beasts either. Of course, there was a reason for that. There were many cultivators in the 10,000 Flower Valley, which attracted the attention of the divine beasts. Secondly, Qin Wushuang's observant finger jade plate collected the aura of the 9-change, celestial tiger's consciousness. Only then could he locate the location of the divine beasts and deal with them. On this 10th island, they were not told how many divine beasts were on this island. Moreover, if they were not close to the territory of the divine beasts, the observant finger jade plate would not be able to collect the aura of the divine beasts if they did not emit it. In that case, Qin Wushuang naturally could not locate the location of the divine beasts. Therefore, in order to survive on this divine beast island, one must first collect the aura of the divine beasts. Similarly, only then could one make an accurate judgment. The moment they landed on this divine beast island, Qin Wushuang felt a completely different aura. This island was indeed completely different from the previous 9 islands. It was less tranquil and more gloomy and terrifying. The strong, murderous aura made Qin Wushuang, a warrior who was used to killing, feel waves of palpitations. It seems that surviving on this island for 2 months is definitely not easy. The 3 islands at the 4th level all had an upper limit of 60 days. Qin Wushuang felt that the final ranking would most likely be produced on this 10th island. It would be extremely difficult to survive on the 10th island for 2 months. Using the same rules, Qin Wushuang took out the observant finger jade plate and started to locate the location of Ling Tianji and Jiangkui. This island was incredibly huge. The positions of these 3 were far apart. Indeed, this Jiangkui is cunning. He is not inside the island, but is heading towards the water region of the Illusion Heavenly Lake. It seems that this Jiangkui is going to use his advantage as a martial artist of the endless Eastern Sea to survive in the water region. This guy seems to have a card up his sleeve. Of course, Qin Wushuang would not allow Jiangkui to be at ease. He initiated the purple cloud in Yang wings and dashed towards the direction where Jiangkui was hiding. On this divine beast island, it would not be a good idea to hide and react passively. At least, Qin Wushuang did not plan to remain passive. Regardless, he decided to grasp the initiative in his hands. After 2 hours, Qin Wushuang already approached the water region where Jiangkui was. With a long whistle, he roared, "Jiangkui, do you think that you can evade the attacks of the divine beasts by hiding under the water region?" Initially, Jiangkui was 100 meters below the water region. However, upon hearing Qin Wushuang's roar, he still felt a burst of throbbing. Inwardly, he was furious. "This Qin Wushuang, I did not provoke you, but you came to provoke me?" At this moment, Ling Tianji's voice also sounded nearby. "Ha ha ha! Qin Wushuang, Jiangkui, you guys sure know how to choose a place. I will also join in the fun." Qin Wushuang was moved inwardly. He is also here. Ling Tianji's laughter sounded again. I'm sorry to tell you guys that I have already disturbed a divine beast lair along the way. Perhaps that divine beast is about to wake up. Moreover, I did not conceal my aura along the way. If the divine beast consciousness is sharp enough, it will definitely be able to chase me here. Ling Tianji was certainly angry that Qin Wushuang was chasing after him. However, he also rationally understood that if he wanted to win the championship, his opponent was not only Qin Wushuang, but also Jiang Ke. That Jiang Ke did not bat an eyelid and hid in the water region. Ling Tianji also calculated that. Therefore, he had the same idea as Qin Wushuang. He absolutely could not let Jiang Ke hide in the water region so comfortably. At this moment, a huge wave suddenly rushed out from the water region, and a huge water column shot straight up to the sky. Jiang Ke transformed into the Kuei dragon true body and roared, "Damn human cultivators, if you two want to fight, go somewhere else. Don't disturb me." Qin Wushuang laughed and said, "Jiang Ke, such a pleasant thing? Who doesn't want to? You want to watch the two of us fight to the death from the other side of the river, so that you can reap the benefits, right?" Jiang Ke sneered and said, "Then come and fight me if you have the ability. I have no objection." Ling Tianji's elegant figure also flew over from afar. He shouted, "Jiang Ke, you have a good plan? Do you think that I can't do anything to you just because you're underwater?" Ling Tianji waved the flag in his hand. His whole body suddenly turned into a ball of sparkling and translucent light, and quickly overflowed in the direction of Jiang Ke. Jiang Ke was now in the Kuei dragon true body. His dragon scales urged, and his whole body released a powerful yellow aura. A powerful dragon breath was urged out all of a sudden. He spurted out a yellow dragon aura from his mouth, and shot it toward the ball of light that Ling Tianji had transformed into. Before the dragon aura shot out, that ball of light of Ling Tianji suddenly dispersed and turned into sparkling starlight all over the sky. Ling Tianji's figure had unexpectedly floated to the side of the huge water column that Jiang Ke was standing on at some unknown time. He twisted a saber with his whole body and waved his arm. "Open!" This saber actually chopped directly toward that huge water column. The water column was chopped by this saber. Immediately, all the water momentum was destroyed. It dispersed in despair, and water splashed in all directions. Jiang Kuei's dragon body, however, scuttled into the clouds. He stared at Ling Tianji as if his eyes were spitting fire. With a sweep of his sharp claws and fangs, the dragon ray grabbed down with an imposing manner that could swallow the heavens and devour the earth. Ling Tianji's saber light was like a carp leaping in the water. White waves and white lights appeared, and they continuously went toward that dragon ray. Waves of power collided with each other, and there were tragic sounds of air exploding. It was like metal colliding, and it was very heart-wrenching. At this moment, in the direction that Ling Tianji was scuttling out from, a powerful roar shook the sky. With this roar, it was as if the entire island was going to collapse. The rumbling sound was like thunder. The divine beast is here. The three people had the same thought in their minds at the same time. Jiang Ke shouted, "I'm not playing with you anymore. I'm going to dive." Although Jiang Ke was powerful in front of a divine beast, he did not have the capital to be arrogant. Leaving Ling Tianji aside, he was going to dive into the water. Qin Wushuang was below at this moment. Seeing Jiang Ke escape, he shouted, "Swallowing Sky, go and stop him." The Swallowing Sky lion dragon received the order. His figure fell into the water like an arrow, and he opened his bloody mouth, swallowing divine ability. Roar! A powerful suction force was sucked toward the direction where Jiang Ke was falling. Jiang Ke was shocked. Damn it! Caught off guard, he was almost swallowed by the Swallowing Sky lion dragon. He urged the dragon breath all over his body, and it barely touched the dragon breath of the Swallowing Sky lion dragon. He was not willing to face it head-on. He shot to the side, trying to bypass the Swallowing Sky lion dragon. He shouted, "Damn it, we're all fellow dragons. Why are you targeting me?" He did not know that the swallowing sky lion dragon was actually summoned by Qin Wushuang. He thought it was an indigenous spiritual beast on this island. The swallowing sky lion dragon was extremely fast. He shot Jiang Kuei to the side. His body turned into a stream of light, moving horizontally with the speed of cutting waves. Jiang Kuei was not willing to be entangled. Just as he was about to fall into the water, a huge long whip suddenly whipped up from the water. Suddenly, more than a dozen huge waves were set off, constantly whipping toward him. Boom, boom, boom. The continuous whipping was so fast that Jiang Kuei had no time to react. He could only retreat again and again. His body involuntarily rushed into the air. Jiang Kuei, who was flustered and exasperated, was attacked continuously. The anger in his heart had actually reached the peak, and the oppression of the divine beast was imminent. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chijian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. Chapter 698. Ling Tianji saw the opportunity and slashed down with his saber. Jiang Kuei, go ashore. All of Jiang Kuei's routes were blocked. He shouted, "You guys actually formed an alliance to deal with me. You broke the rules. You broke the rules." Ling Tianji laughed. "Alliance? Are you dreaming? That kid Qin Wushuang has been chasing after me for a long time." At this moment, Qin Wushuang quickly activated the purple cloud yin-yang wings. With the supreme Tao shield in front of him and the graceful spiritual bow in his hand, he shouted at Jiang Kuei, "Jiang Kuei, if you take one more step into the water, I'll shoot a hole in you." Jiang Kuei knew that his wishful thinking was in vain. He said furiously, "Even if we're not in the water, you guys will die before me." After speaking, his body turned into a stream of light and rushed toward the interior of the island. Qin Wushuang couldn't care about confronting Ling Tianji at this moment. With the purple cloud yin-yang wings, his body turned into a ball of light and shot into the clouds. Using the cloud feathery technique, his body turned into a ball of green smoke and blended into one with the blue sky and white clouds. He had the feeling of lying on the 9 layers of clouds leisurely. Ling Tianji made a hand gesture and didn't dare to be negligent. Sparkling and translucent light burst out from his body. In an instant, he also turned into specks of starlight and disappeared into the void like sparkling water. Although Qin Wushuang was hidden in the clouds, he had been paying attention to Ling Tianji's movements. Seeing Ling Tianji leave, he thought, if Ling Tianji lured the divine beasts here, he must know the nest of the divine beasts. Maybe this guy will go to seize the supreme Tao fruit first and snatch the championship. But I can't let him take advantage of this. Ling Tianji's method of diverting trouble was very brilliant. He could lure the divine beasts to deal with Jiang Kuei and lure the tiger away from the mountain so that he could explore the supreme Tao fruit leisurely. However, Qin Wushuang was still dubious. After all, he wasn't sure how many divine beasts there were on this 10th island. What if there was more than one? What if there was no supreme Tao fruit in the nest? What if he was walking right into a trap? Therefore, while keeping track of Ling Tianji, they also had to prepare a backup plan. It would be troublesome if they provoked the mythological beast's lair and attracted more mythological beasts. On the island, the roars of the divine beasts were still ringing in their ears. Ling Tianji flew at high speed and arrived at a deep canyon area. His figure flashed and landed at the bottom of the canyon. Qin Wushuang took out the sealed scroll and summoned the sky pilfered mole and moon palace jade hair. He ordered, "You two, go down and check. If you find the aura of the supreme Tao fruit, contact me immediately." Sky pilfering mole and moon palace jade hair accepted the order and left. Qin Wushuang was not in a hurry to follow Ling Tianji. He also had to be careful. After dealing with Ling Tianji for so long, Qin Wushuang knew that this person was not simple. Who knew if he had set up a trap for Qin Wushuang to fall into? Therefore, Qin Wushuang absolutely wouldn't go down rashly under the circumstances where he wasn't sure if there was a supreme Tao fruit or not. 15 minutes passed, half an hour passed, Sky Pilfering Mole and Moon Palace Jade Hair searched for a long time, but still found nothing. They transmitted their consciousness to Qin Wushuang. Master, there is no aura of the supreme Tao fruit at all. Qin Wushuang sneered and thought, this Ling Tianji is indeed playing tricks with me. This place may not be the lair of the mythological beast. However, since this Ling Tianji likes to play tricks, I'll play with him. Qin Wushuang was just about to take action when he suddenly saw Jiang Kuei's figure on the observant finger jade plate rushing over here at high speed. Haha, it seems that Jiang Kuei was also confused by Ling Tianji's trick. That Jiang Kuei left in a rage. Perhaps he did it on purpose for us to see. He must also be thinking that since Ling Tianji attracted the mythological beast, he must know where the mythological beast lair is. Therefore, he followed Ling Tianji all the way here. Qin Wushuang saw Jiang Kuei's arrival and wasn't in a hurry. Let Jiang Kuei play with Ling Tianji first. Thinking of this, Qin Wushuang's figure hid in the cloud and directly hid. Just when Qin Wushuang felt that he had a chance to watch the fire burning across the river, Qin Wushuang suddenly sensed that something was wrong. Not good, mythological beast. When Qin Wushuang thought of this, his body reacted almost at the same time and shot out like an arrow. Roar. The roar filled the sky, accompanied by countless tentacles, shot out in all directions from the cloud. It was actually a monster with countless tentacles. Each tentacle was like a strong rope that could extend freely. Qin Wushuang simply didn't have time to think carefully and rushed downwards. At this time, he could only avoid the mythological beast attack for as long as possible. At least, he had to let Jiang Kuei and Ling Tianji be attacked by the mythological beast first. The purple cloud yin-yang wings were fully activated. Qin Wushuang's figure, Jiang Kuei's figure, and Ling Tianji's figure appeared in the void almost at the same time. And that monster's body was like an umbrella that held up the sky. It opened up and covered the three figures. In other words, the three's escape route was completely blocked. Master, we found it. We found the supreme Tao fruit. In a flash, Sky Pilfered Mole and Moon Palace Jade Hair transmitted their consciousness. Qin Wushuang's heart was moved. Without thinking, he pulled the graceful spiritual bow fully and stretched his body. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. 2 arrows were shot towards that mythological beast. At the same time, Qin Wushuang's body quickly plunged to the ground. Umph! When that mythological beast saw the bow, an arrow shot over. Its 2 tentacles casually rolled and caught the 2 arrows. When that mythological beast saw the bow and arrow that Qin Wushuang used, it was also shocked. Its entire body trembled slightly. It was also this moment of hesitation that Qin Wushuang's figure had already plunged out of the mythological beast's attack range. With the sealing scroll in his hand, he shouted, "Mole, Jade Hair, return to your positions." With the 2 rays of light, these 2 mythological beasts had already returned to the seal. Qin Wushuang casually waved his hand and kept the supreme Tao fruit that they had plucked into his bag. Ha ha! Ling Tianji, Jiang Kuei, you guys have fun here. I'll make a move first. Qin Wushuang laughed loudly. He had already taken out the transfer jade tablet in his hand. Just as he was about to activate it, that mythological beast suddenly roared. Bang! The transfer jade tablet in Qin Wushuang's hand was actually shattered by this power of the supreme Tao fruit. The transfer jade tablet was shattered. Qin Wushuang was dumbfounded all of a sudden. Everyone knew that to leave the island, one only needed to activate the transfer jade tablet. However, he had never thought about what would happen if the transfer jade tablet was shattered. When Jiang Kuei and Ling Tianji saw that Qin Wushuang had snatched away the supreme Tao fruit, they were furious. When they saw that the transfer jade tablet in Qin Wushuang's hand suddenly shattered, they laughed with great joy. However, their complacency didn't last long. That mythological beast suddenly seemed to have gone berserk. The entire void was completely covered by its huge body. The sky was dark, and the earth was dark as it pounced down in a dark mass. Countless tentacles were like 10,000 arrows that were shot at the same time, wrapping around those two people. Not good. Run. However, how could their running speed be compared to the mythological beast's attack speed? Bang. One was wrapped up. Bang. Another one. Ling Tianji and Jiang Kuei were wrapped up by the mythological beast tentacles. Their bodies were suspended in the air, and they struggled continuously. However, they actually couldn't move an inch. They were scared out of their wits. Without thinking, they directly activated the transfer jade tablet. Whoosh! Ling Tianji out of the game. Jiang Kuei out of the game. Qin Wushuang's expression was unsightly. These two opponents were sent out in an instant. However, he couldn't feel happy at all. Now, he was the champion. However, his transfer jade tablet was shattered. Facing this mythological beast, no matter how confident Qin Wushuang was, he simply didn't have any capital to resist. The most terrible thing was that the 3 dark green arrows of the graceful spiritual bow had already been used up. The graceful spiritual bow in his hand was now like a tiger without claws and teeth. There was simply no room for it to be used. With the Supreme Tao shield protecting in front of him, Qin Wushuang grabbed the Overlord Breaking Formation Spear with both hands. He could only use the spear. Ha ha! Little guy, do you think you could be more powerful than those two guys? That mythological beast suddenly emitted a human voice. However, within this laughter, there didn't seem to be much hostility. That mythological beast body was also continuously becoming smaller and smaller. Its aura was also ceaselessly withdrawing. The originally dark sky also gradually regained its brightness. Little guy, where did your graceful spiritual bow come from? Do you know its owner? There was a trace of excitement in the tone of this mythological beast. Qin Wushuang never expected that this mythological beast would ask about the graceful spiritual bow. He could not help but remember the origin of the graceful spiritual bow that second Chief Qin Yunran had mentioned. It was a divine weapon owned by an elite warrior of the Illusion Heavenly Lake. He had failed to challenge the Xianyuan clan when he came to the Xianyuan Mount. As a result, the graceful spiritual bow had been lost in the Xianyuan Mound since then. Qin Wushuang knew about this illusion. Could it be that this mythological beast was related to the original owner of the graceful spiritual bow? When he thought here, Qin Wushuang could not help but be even more vigilant. Seeing Qin Wushuang fall into silence, that mythological beast laughed. Little guy, don't worry. If I wanted to harm you, even if there were 10 of you, I would have captured you without putting up a fight. A moment ago, when I shattered your transfer jade tablet, it was not to kill you. I just didn't want you to get sent out. Seeing your mythological beast, this graceful spiritual bow was gifted to me by a friend. That friend of mine also inherited it from a senior of his sect. Since his senior is already dead, I don't know where he came from. Are you from the Xianyuan Mound? The mythological beast asked. Yes, I am from the Heavenly Emperor Qin clan. Qin Wushuang did not lie. Yes, it's right that you are from the Xianyuan Mound. This way, in the past, Golden Cicada did challenge an elite warrior of the Xianyuan clan and died in a foreign land. Ha ha ha. For many years, no one has revealed the answer to this riddle. Now, the graceful spiritual bow has reappeared. Ha ha ha, never mind, never mind. From the tone of this mythological beast, there was a hint of vicissitudes. Golden Cicada, are you from the Karakoram Immortal Clan? Ha ha, you have never heard of the 4 cicadas of the Karakoram? That mythological beast found it somewhat unbelievable. I am ignorant and inexperienced. The powerhouses of the Totem Clan are incredibly mysterious, and I have no way to know. However, I have seen Chief Snow Cicada of the Karakoram Immortal Clan. Snow Cicada? Ha ha. She is only a junior among the 4 cicadas of the Karakoram. Not to mention being inferior to Golden Cicada, she is far inferior to Silver Cicada. If Golden Cicada did not die, perhaps he could be on par with Head Chief Wang Cicada. It was Qin Wushuang's first time hearing about the secrets of the totem clan. Although he was in a dangerous situation, he was engrossed in listening. It seemed that the graceful spiritual bow had indeed come from an elite warrior of the Illusion Heavenly Lake, and it was the weapon of a totem elite warrior. Now, Qin Wushuang finally understood why the graceful spiritual bow could be so monstrous and kill people above its level. It had such an extraordinary origin. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.qitian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author. Support the original reading. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.